Chapter 962. Even Lu Jiang he could not remember how many battles the Kunlun devil cult had experienced in the past. In the past, when Chu Xiu was chatting with Lu Jiang he once said that ever since he joined the Kunlun devil cult, he had always been killing. In the beginning, Dugu Weiwei led them to kill together, but in the end, each of the four great demon lords had the power to destroy a top force on their own. Later, as they killed and killed, those who dared to resist were almost all killed. The rest either kept a low profile or knelt down and surrendered. The Kunlun devil cult was the real overlord of the underworld, with monstrous demonic flames. In the scene in front of them, Dugu Weiwei and the four great demon lords were present. It was obvious that a battle in the early days of the Kunlun devil cult had a great impact on the blood-red lotus artifact spirit, which was why it had been preserved until now. At this time, the battle was still going on, but the leading martial artists of both sides had not made a move. Finally, the people from the alliance of the righteous sects could no longer endure it. Over 10 cultivators all rushed towards Dugu Weiwei. In an instant, Buddhist light, Tao accumulation, sword qi, all sorts of energies radiated out in this space. Those energies caused the hearts of those who saw them to tremble. In fact, they had already reached a level where they could affect the constellations. In an instant it was as though the heavens were collapsing and the earth was splitting apart, causing people to think that this scene was the great calamity of the ancient times. Now, Chu Xiu was watching from the perspective of the blood-red lotus artifact spirit. Although he could also feel a trace of ethereal aura, the artifact spirit was an artifact spirit after all. It could not understand the realm of the human martial artist's strength. However, Chu Xiu guessed that those who were qualified to attack Dugu Weiwei should have reached the heaven and earth mysterious realm. More than 10 existences in the heaven and earth mysterious realm, in the current underworld, were almost all the top supreme powerhouses. Just when Chu Xiu wanted to see how Dugu Weiwei was going to break the stalemate, Dugu Weiwei had already made his move. Listen to the spring rain circled around his body, bringing with it the pleasant sound of a saber. In the next moment, the scimitar that shone with a blood-red moonlight slashed out, and it even left his hand. In an instant, the dark clouds and demonic aura covered the sky, and the sky darkened. There was only a crimson crescent moon in the sky. That was the blade ray brought by listen to the spring rain. The next moment, the moon fell, tearing everything in front of it apart. The Buddhist aura was extinguished, the Taoist connotation collapsed, and the sword qi dissipated. Fragments of weapons and armors mixed with blood rained down from the sky. Drops of blood fell from the sky and landed on the ground, creating a crisp sound. The saber trembled and returned to Dugu Weiwei's hand with the blood ray. A drop of blood fell along the blade, making a soft sound. At this moment, Chu Xiu finally understood why this saber was called a Night of Listen to the Spring Rain in the small building. Before Dugu Weiwei made his move, Chu Xiu had fantasized about how Dugu Weiwei would make his move. However, when he made his move, Chu Xiu already understood that at the level of Dugu Weiwei, there was no need to care about the means to defeat the enemy. It was just a simple slash, and blood rain would fall, and everything would be swept away. At this moment, Chu Xiu's spirit was completely immersed in the illusion. To be precise, he was immersed in the charm of Dugu Weiwei's slash. Just now, Dugu Weiwei did not use a saber technique like the ethereal slash, but the ultimate true meaning of saber Dao, which belonged to Dugu Weiwei's powerful martial Dao. Chu Xiu could feel that at this moment, Dugu Weiwei was even stronger than the Dugu Weiwei who destroyed the Iron Emperor Castle when he obtained the ethereal slash and the triple city destruction arrow. It should also be after this battle that Dugu Weiwei could be considered to have solidified his title as the world's #1. As long as Ning Xuanji did not show up, no one in the entire underworld could stop his monstrous demonic flames. However, before Chu Xiu could completely comprehend it, the illusion in front of him suddenly dissipated. After all, the blood-red tea was just an artifact spirit. It had spiritual intelligence, but it could not think like a human. It merely sensed Dugu Weiwei's qi and blood in Chu Xiu's blood, which was why it released the illusion subconsciously. In fact, it was also a comparison. Now that the comparison was over, the person in front of it did indeed have some of Dugu Weiwei's aura on him, the illusion would naturally dissipate. Chu Xiu watched a great battle in the illusion, but that was only in his spirit. In the outside world, only a moment had passed. Looking up at the ancestor Huangfu, who had a look of disbelief on his face, Chu Xiu sneered and put the blood-red tea into his secret space box. In the next moment, he was already charging toward the ancestor Huangfu. The Buddha and demon form condensed behind him, suppressing with a Buddhist light. The apocalyptic fire burned intensely, burning everything in its path. The two energies that originated from the same source but were completely different were perfectly integrated on Chu Xiu's body. There was no sign of forceful distortion. Without the blood-red tea, and with his qi, blood, and primordial spirit injured, the ancestor Huangfu was probably not even as strong as those true fire spirit refinement cultivators. He could not withstand the apocalyptic fire at all. At this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly said to Lu Jianghe, "Get ready, I'll help you reconstruct your body. Don't waste so much qi and blood." Lu Jianghe was stunned when he heard that. He did not expect Chu Xiu to say that because Chu Xiu had already told him that he would only let Chu Xiu out after he stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm. However, before Lu Jianghe could react, Chu Xiu had already slashed out with his saber. The ethereal slash landed, and everything was frozen under the saber's momentum. The ancestor Huangfu could only watch as the saber slashed his body into two, causing blood to splatter everywhere. However, there was a hint of relief in his eyes. He had lost this battle after all. He had been cautious his entire life and made a gamble before his death. In the end, he had lost the gamble, and it was a terrible loss. However, the ancestor Huangfu did not regret it. It could even be said that he would not regret dying in the hands of Chu Xiu. As the ancestor of the Huangfu clan, he had guarded the Huangfu clan cautiously for so many years. However, he was also a cultivator who had once dominated the pugilistic world. The Huangfu clan's mansion had trapped him for his entire life, and he was unwilling to accept it. Especially after his internal injuries acted up, he was no longer willing to wait for death on his bed. He wanted to take a risk. Although he had lost to Chu Xiu, the #1 cultivator of the younger generation. He was killed by an influential figure who could stir up the pugilistic world. Dying in the hands of a renowned opponent was actually much better than dying in pain on his bed. The latter was a release, while the former was a disgrace to a cultivator. Of course, Chu Xiu did not have time to think about what the ancestor Huangfu was thinking. The ancestor Huangfu's body was sliced into two, and he could not let the fresh blood go to waste. In an instant, Chu Xiu had already crushed the blood soul bead and activated the blood demon power. Copious amounts of fresh blood gushed into the blood soul bead's fragments. In the air, copious amounts of fresh blood writhed as if they were alive. In fact, Chu Xiu did not even need to use the blood demon power for the fresh blood to twist into a ball and absorb the ancestor Huangfu's qi and blood. By the time the ancestor Huangfu landed on the ground, the two halves of his body had already turned into dried corpses. At the same time, the ball of qi and blood had condensed to the height of a person, forming a sinister human figure. The next moment, the sinister human figure of blood became vivid and lifelike. A burly figure appeared from the blood figure, laughing maniacally. "Ha ha ha! I've finally seen the light of day again." With a dark expression, Chu Xiu tossed him a black robe. "Put on some clothes before you get excited." After reconstructing his body with the ancestor Huangfu's fresh blood, Lu Jianghe naturally did not have any clothes. Therefore, when everyone was shocked by the scene just now, they saw a burly naked man laughing maniacally at the sky like a pervert. It was an eyesore. Releasing Lu Jianghe was actually Chu Xiu's plan a long time ago. Previously, Chu Xiu said that he would only release him when he had the ability to control him. That was probably when Chu Xiu had also stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm. However, Chu Xiu realized that he was almost able to control Lu Jianghe now. As long as he did not run into an unreasonable person like Kong Dongming, Chu Xiu was almost invincible among those of the same level. Moreover, even if he did not consider himself, Chu Xiu could still control Lu Jianghe because he still had Shang Tianliang. As long as the people from Merchant City were around, he would be able to control Shang Tianliang. Similarly, with Shang Tianliang's strength, subduing Lu Jianghe would not be a problem. Moreover, releasing Lu Jianghe at this moment, with the characteristics of the blood demon power, his combat strength alone would be comparable to several martial artists of the same level. Moreover, he was the type that would become stronger the more he fought. After Lu Jianghe finished reconstructing his body, he only glanced at Chu Xiu and immediately went to kill the enemy obediently. He was in urgent need of the power of qi and blood. Devouring the ancestor Huangfu's qi and blood was far from enough. He was only at the early stage of the true fire spirit refinement realm. One had to know that Chu Xiu had previously devoured the qi and blood of the Sun and Lu family's patriarchs, as well as countless martial artists from the two families, to reconstruct his body. The total amount of qi and blood he needed was no less than Chu Xiu's. Of course, the most important thing was that Lu Jianghe did not dare to provoke Chu Xiu now. Previously, Lu Jianghe had thought that since Chu Xiu was so despicable and would taunt and ridicule him whenever he had nothing to do, he would definitely teach him a lesson once he got out. However, now that he had finally reconstructed his body, Lu Jianghe did not dare to be presumptuous anymore. He did not follow Chu Xiu for the longest time, but he stayed by Chu Xiu's side all the time. Therefore, he knew the most secrets about Chu Xiu. Apart from his close relationship with Patriarch Dugu, there were too many doubts and mysteries about this kid. He was like a bottomless pit that was unfathomable. Lu Jianghe still had some ties with Chu Xiu, so it was better for him to be obedient and not provoke him. Previously, when he was in the Kunlun Devil cult, Lu Jianghe actually did not know what was good for him. He even took the initiative to ask Dugu Weiwei for the position of the Demon Lord. However, after being locked up for 500 years, he, an evil and impetuous devil, had been forced to become a chatterbox. If he were to act stupidly at this time, then there would be no medicine that could cure him. Therefore, he went to kill and work without another word. Chu Xiu was stunned by his obedience. He had thought that Lu Jianghe would be indignant and clamor a little. Chapter 963. Lu Jianghe's demonic blood technique was the most suitable in such a chaotic battle. That was why Chu Xiu said that he alone could match several cultivators of the same cultivation level. Although Chu Xiu also knew the demonic blood technique, he wasn't the creator of the technique like Lu Jianghe. It had to be said that Lu Jianghe's might was much stronger than Chu Xiu's when they both used the demonic blood technique. Lu Jianghe slaughtered his way through the crowd, strands of blood-red thread circling around his body. All sorts of strange things appeared one after another. Every time he killed someone, he would absorb their qi and blood. Sensing the power, he would laugh maniacally. He was even more perverted than the naked man he had been when he first appeared. There were so many demonic Dao cultivators present. If one were to say who resembled a demonic Dao cultivator the most, it would definitely be Lu Jianghe. Even Wei Shuya and the rest were curious about where Chu Xiu found such a person. Looking at his cultivation technique, he did look familiar. Moreover, the more Lu Jianghe killed, the stronger he became. When the demonic blood technique reconstructed his body, as long as there was a suitable environment, he could recover his strength at lightning speed. Previously, Lu Jianghe had been astonished that Chu Xiu had actually made his own arrangements and created a large-scale killing field. He had not expected to encounter such a situation this time. With Lu Jianghe's intervention, the situation was completely reversed. When the Huangfu clan saw that their patriarch was killed, Huangfu Weiming and the other core forces of the Huangfu clan let out a sorrowful roar and left with their people. From the looks of it, they obviously knew what Patriarch Huangfu was thinking. They fought with their lives on the line, but they failed. If they stayed, they would really be sending themselves to their deaths. The situation below had stabilized, but Kong Dongming and Xiang Chong were still unresolved. Chu Xiu turned his gaze to Kong Dongming and said in a deep voice, "Old Wei, retreat first." Wei Shuya had just taken a few blows from Kong Dongming, and he was already at his limit. Hearing this, he immediately took a few steps back. He rubbed his wrist and said, "I'm old and useless. Talented people are born in every generation. None of the people of Jianghu in this generation are simple." Wei Shuya had lived his entire life. He had fought against the leaders of the 5 major sword sects of the previous generation and the current generation. However, this was the first time he had seen someone as strong as Kong Dongming. He was so strong that it made no sense. After Wei Shuya left, Chu Xiu's body was surrounded by an extremely pure devil qi. That demonic qi did not contain any attributes. It was obviously demonic qi, but it gave off an extremely natural feeling, as if it was a power that should exist in the world. Mako Mori and Su Yen exchanged glances at the same time, then looked at Chu Xiu in shock. The devil qi on Chu Xiu's body was extremely pure and powerful. It was so powerful that they could not help but shudder. Lu Jianghe, who was fighting with someone else, also looked at Chu Xiu and shuddered. It was this power again. It was the power that belonged to the sect leader's indestructible Sky Demon book. This power was unfamiliar to Chu Xiu, but it was also very familiar. It was as if it should have existed in his body all along. According to what Lu Jianghe had said, when he had absorbed Dugu Weiwei's blood, he had revealed this power. However, Chu Xiu had no memory of it. After that, Chu Xiu had not discovered that this power existed in his body. However, just now, he had seen the image left behind in the blood-red lantern. When he channeled his devil qi again, the aura in his body had uncontrollably transformed into this extremely pure and terrifying devil qi. That aura and that power made even Chu Xiu, the user, feel shocked. He felt like he could not control it. Seeing Chu Xiu reveal this power, Kong Dongming suddenly raised his head, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. In his life, he had only been interested in the way of the sword, and the only thing that could attract his interest was the way of the sword. However, the power that Chu Xiu was using now really surprised him. He had never seen such powerful power before. Chu Xiu held the peerless heavenly saber in his hand, and boundless devil qi surrounded the saber. Chu Xiu's spiritual energy was immersed in the illusion just now. The moment Dugu Weiwei struck, he did not use a saber technique, but a saber intent. Chu Xiu was not a genius, and he could completely understand the saber intent after seeing it once. Even now, he was still confused about the saber intent of Dugu Weiwei's saber, and he could not figure out the true meaning within it. However, he did not know why, but he still had a vague feeling. It could be said to be instinctive, but it was not. In any case, it was hard to describe. Following this vague feeling, Chu Xiu's saber slashed down, and the crisp sound of the saber rang through the sky. Devil qi filled the sky, covering the clouds and the sun. Even Chu Xiu did not expect the power of this slash, and the expressions of the people around him changed suddenly. The saber light cut through the sky, and the sound of the saber rang through everyone's hearts. In an instant, the dazzling saber light tore through the clouds of devil qi, and the boundless sharpness had already enveloped Kong Dongming. When he was overseas, Kong Dongming had fought many people to the death. Of course, to him, he did not realize that he was the one who had offended others. But no matter which battle it was, it had never given him such great pressure like this one. Pressure was something that Kong Dongming rarely felt. In an instant, the sword light around Kong Dongming's body was restrained, but in the next moment, an even more powerful sword aura bloomed around him. From afar, they could not see Kong Dongming's figure at all. All they could see was a peerless divine sword with a soaring sharpness. He turned himself into a sword, and cut through the sky and earth. The edge of the sword shot up to the sky and collided with the saber light. In an instant, the sound of the saber and the sword clashing was so ear-piercing that it made everyone tremble. A huge wave of sharpness spread, and the entire imperial city shone with the light of the matrix, but in the next moment, it shattered with a loud bang. This was the ultimate matrix of the Northern Yen Imperial Palace. Without the power to destroy the imperial city, it would definitely not be activated. It could be said that Chu Xiu's saber and Kong Dongming's sword had the power to destroy the entire imperial city, which was why the matrix was activated. In the end, the matrix did not even last for a moment and was directly destroyed. The elder of the Xiang royal family could no longer remain calm. That was the ultimate matrix that had been built since the founding of the Northern Yen Empire, and yet it was destroyed. If the battle continued, the entire Yanjing city would be destroyed by them. Previously, he had said that this fight for the throne was only a small matter, and that there would not be as much bloodshed as the previous times. In reality, that was indeed the case. Although there were many people on both sides, their strength was about the same, so it was not easy for anyone to die. But this time, the number of experts involved far exceeded that of the previous fights for the throne. If they were allowed to continue fighting, the consequences would be unimaginable. At that moment, in the field, Chu Xiu and Kong Dongming had retreated at the same time. There was a gap on Kong Dongming's long sword, and there was also a gap on Chu Xiu's peerless heavenly saber, which was even bigger than Kong Dongming's. Moreover, the natural law war case itself was made up of countless mechanisms. Now that there was a gap, when the natural law war case changed into other weapons, it would be more damaged, and it might even be unusable, which would result in greater losses. The power of the previous slash could be said to be shocking. Even Chu Xiu himself did not know how he had used it. Now that he circulated his true qi once again, that extremely pure devil qi seemed to have disappeared into thin air. It never appeared again, and that hazy feeling also disappeared along with it. But after all, Chu Xiu had successfully slashed out that slash. The slash that he had slashed out with his own hands naturally had a very deep impression on Chu Xiu. The memory of that slash had been branded in Chu Xiu's bones. Although this slash looked very different from the slash that Dugu Weiwei made with Listen to Spring Rain, in fact, the core of this slash was not the saber technique, but the saber intent. So it was normal that the appearance was different, as long as the saber intent was correct. If Chu Xiu also had Listened to Spring Rain in his hand, he might be able to slash out the same slash. Of course, the premise was that he also had the same strength as Dugu Weiwei. Looking at Kong Dongming again, Chu Xiu was actually a little embarrassed. The power from before had already disappeared. Although the saber intent still had its memories, without the extremely pure demonic qi from before, he was unable to slash out with the same power. At this time, although Kong Dongming had also used all his strength, it seemed that he still had the strength to fight. But at this time, the situation in the field had changed. It was not someone else, but Shang Tianliang. Shang Tianliang had indeed improved rapidly. It should be said that before, Chu Xiu had somewhat underestimated the city lord of Merchant City. How could someone who could step into the mysterious realm of heaven and earth in a place like Green City be a simple existence? It was only because of his congenital deficiency that his combat strength was so weak, and he was beaten up like a sandbag by Rama. But now, after such a long period of comprehension and reorganizing martial arts, Shang Tianliang's strength was close to the level of a normal mysterious realm expert. Although Xiang Chong relied on the Nine-Dragon Seal to unleash the power of the mysterious realm of heaven and earth, that was only an external object after all. There was still a gap between him and the real existence of the mysterious realm of heaven and earth. At the very least, every time they exchanged blows, his internal organs would be shaken, and the backlash would be great. Most importantly, Xianxia did not dare to use the true power of the Nine-Dragon Seal. The potential of the Nine-Dragon Seal was beyond everyone's imagination. It was not a divine weapon, but it was a divine weapon. It was closely connected to the Northern Yen Dragon Vein, so it could unleash the power of the Dragon Vein when facing an enemy. But at the same time, if it was used too much and caused too much pressure or damage to the Nine-Dragon Seal, the Dragon Vein would also be damaged. So, unless it was absolutely necessary, the Northern Yen would not use a killing weapon like the Nine-Dragon Seal. Right now, it was just a fight for the throne. If they lost, the Northern Yen would only have a new emperor, and it would not affect the interests of the Xiang royal family. But if the Nine-Dragon Seal was damaged, the Northern Yen would be in danger. So, in the end, Xianxia could not hold on anymore. Chapter 964. Xianxia was not a ruthless person. He never had been. He was also not a decisive person. If he hardened his heart to help Xianxia ascend to the throne, he actually had many choices. Chu Xiu could even think of quite a few despicable methods. After all, he was a direct descendant of the royal family who held the Nine-Dragon Seal. In terms of status, he had much more room to maneuver than an outsider like Chu Xiu. But in the end, Xianxia used the Nine-Dragon Seal to fight against Chu Xiu and the others head-on. From this, one could imagine what kind of person Xianxia was. At this point, Xianxia hesitated again. Should he fight to the death with Chu Xiu and the others? Just at that moment, the ancestor of the Xiang dynasty sighed and said, "Xianxia, stop. The Nine-Dragon Seal is not for you to use to fight for the throne. If you lose, you lose. Are you going to throw away all of your trump cards for your own matters?" The ancestor of the Xiang family urged Xianxia to stop and not Chu Xiu. It wasn't because he didn't want to, but because he knew that he could not persuade Chu Xiu, so he could only persuade Xianxia. If one side didn't stop first, the Northern Yen Imperial Palace would probably be lost today. Looking at the people still fighting below and the bleeding corpses on the ground, a hint of helplessness appeared in Xianxia's eyes. But in the end, he still put away the Nine-Dragon Seal and shouted with an unwilling voice, "All of you, stop." As Xianxia spoke, the people from the Hall of Masters and the inner palace all stopped. When Kang Dongming heard this, he gestured one at Xianxia, turned around, and left. He only agreed to help Xianxia once. Now that he had fulfilled his promise, it was naturally his turn to leave. However, when he saw Xianxia order everyone to stop, Xianxia descended into madness. "Uncle! Don't stop. We still have a chance. We still have a chance." It was fine if one didn't obtain something, but to obtain it first and then lose it, that feeling was even worse than death. Xianxia was like that now. Previously, he only had some fantasies about who the throne belonged to. Of course, every prince had these fantasies. In fact, he had never thought that he could become the emperor. But now, he had become the crown prince and was only one step away from that position. No, to be precise, he was not even half a step away. Xianxia couldn't accept the fact that a place that he could reach with a stretch of his hand was so far away from him. Xianxia could not help but shake his head when he saw Xianxia's expression. He said to Xiangli, "This time, we have lost. The throne is yours. From now on, the Imperial Hall will support your ascension. But Xianxia is your brother after all. Can you let him off this once?" Xiangli suppressed the excitement in his heart and shook his head calmly. "Imperial uncle, I am very gratified that you made the right choice. However, it is absolutely impossible for me to let Xianxia off. Uncle, you should be able to imagine this. If Xianxia becomes the emperor, will he spare my life? If I let him go, I'll just be looking for trouble for myself. It's not that I'm cold-blooded, it's just that these are the rules." Hearing that, Xianxia let out a long sigh. He did not have any feelings towards Xiang Chong. He was even dissatisfied that Xiang Chong placed people in the imperial hall. He just did not want to see the people of the Xiang dynasty continue to bleed. Looking at it now, he was still too naive. But if he died, then so be it. Just as Xiang Li said, it was already a matter of life and death. Leaving him alive would only be trouble. He, Xiang Chong, was only supporting Xiang Chong according to the posthumous edict Xiang Long left behind. He did not really look favorably upon Xiang Chong. If Xiang Long's posthumous edict allowed Xiang Li to become the prince, perhaps he would support Xiang Li again. No. No. Xiang Chong was completely terrified. But in the blink of an eye, he charged towards Xiang Li as if he had gone mad. Chu Xiu raised his brows and waved his hand. Immediately, two disciples of the martial suppression hall moved and dragged Xiang Chong to the side, waiting for Xiang Li to deal with him. Chu Xiu patted Xiang Li's shoulder and said, "Your Highness, prepare to ascend to the throne." Actually, Chu Xiu's action was very impolite. After all, Xiang Li's identity was already confirmed and he could ascend to the throne at any time. In the next moment, he would be the emperor of the Northern Yan. But Chu Xiu did it on purpose. In front of power and authority, some people could not hold on to their hearts. It was very easy for them to lose themselves and swell up. Xiang Chong was like that. So, what Chu Xiu did was to remind Xiang Li not to forget how he got his current throne. Actually, Chu Xiu did not need to specially remind him. Although Xiang Li was excited, he was not so excited that he became dizzy. Xiang Chong went from nothing to something, then to nothing. Xiang Li went from something to nothing, then lost it and regained it. Although it was only a matter of sequence, it was enough to completely change Xiang Li's mentality. Because he had already tasted the feeling of loss, he did not want to experience it again. The ancestor of the Xiang dynasty waved his hand and called for a group of people to wash the floor. They thoroughly cleaned up the imperial city that was in a mess. After the washing, although there were still many damages, it was much better than before. The ancestor of the Xiang dynasty threw Xiang Long's posthumous edict to one side. According to the ancestral rules, he started to carry out various complicated ceremonies step by step to arrange for Xiang Li to ascend to the throne. Something like a posthumous edict might have some meaning when you were alive. But now that you're dead, do you really expect someone to take the nonsense of a dead person seriously? Although Xiang Chong did take it seriously, after weighing the pros and cons, he gave up. When Xiang Li sat on the throne wearing the dragon robe, he was still a bit dizzy. He won. He actually won. The throne that he had lost was once again returned to his hands. Xiang Li could not describe that feeling. Touching the ancient patterns on the throne, Xiang Li did not think that the throne was very beautiful. He even thought that he could change it after he ascended to the throne. But when he almost lost it, Xiang Li knew how precious it was. Calming himself down, the first thing Xiang Li did after ascending to the throne was to replan the current power structure of the Northern Yan. That was what every emperor needed to do. Among the military and other powers, Xiang Li did not move a single one. Those who maintained neutrality were the cornerstone of the entire Northern Yan dynasty. Although Xiang Li knew that they did not help him, they were all loyal to the Northern Yan. Because his interests were already tied to the Northern Yan. As for the people that Chu Xiu planted, they naturally returned to the suppression martial hall. As for the imperial consecrator hall, unexpectedly, Xiang Li still let Xiang Chong control it. Although Xiang Chong was his enemy before and almost prevented him from ascending to the throne, Xiang Li's judgment was still quite accurate. The other party only wanted Xiang Chong to ascend to the throne because of the edict that Xiang Long left behind. In reality, Xiang Chong also maintained neutrality. He was the one who truly supported the Xiang royal family. Moreover, Xiang Chong's strength was not weak. In addition, he was a direct descendant of the royal family and could control the 9-dragon seal. It was more suitable for him to continue to control the throne. Even Xiang Chong himself did not expect this. Because he had already planned to cultivate in the Imperial Consecrator Hall and have someone else take control of the throne. Hearing Xiang Li's words, Xiang Chong revealed a complicated expression. He bowed and nodded in agreement. Of course, other than the Imperial Consecrator Hall, Xiang Li would definitely take back the other powers that Xiang Long had given him. For example, the experts in the Imperial Palace and the Imperial Army. Xiang Wu was in charge of the Imperial Army. Xiang Li did not pay much attention to Xiang Wu before. It was Chu Xiu who once told him that among all the people in the Northern Yan royal family, Xiang Wu was the one that he thought the most highly of. Xiang Wu was also the one that was most worthy to be roped in. Xiang Li firmly believed in Chu Xiu's judgment of people. Therefore, he gave the Imperial Army to Xiang Wu. As they were both members of the Xiang royal family, he was not worried that Xiang Wu would betray him. It could even be used to rope him in. Of course, in Chu Xiu's eyes, this was not very useful. He had unintentionally said this to Xiang Li. If Xiang Li really wanted to rope in Xiang Wu, he did not need to give him the Imperial Army. He could buy all the bananas in Yanjing City and give them to Xiang Wu. The effect would probably be better than this. After rewarding the others, Xiang Li looked at Chu Xiu. He took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, I have decided to raise the standard of the Jianghu Hall. From now on, the Jianghu Hall will be the same as the entire military. The Northern Yan Imperial Court controls the country. The Jianghu Hall controls the Northern Yan martial arts. The Jianghu and the Imperial Court are one. From today onwards, official Chu is recognized as the supreme martial artist of the Northern Yan. He is also the pillar of the Northern Yan. As soon as he said this, the expressions of everyone present changed. Chu Xiu did not spend so much effort to help Xiang Li ascend to the throne for nothing. He definitely wanted something after this. However, no one expected that Chu Xiu's appetite was so big. What he wanted was the entire Northern Yan martial arts. To want to control the entire Northern Yan martial arts in one go, was Chu Xiu not afraid of being stuffed to death? The faces of the people from Chunyang Dao sect and Great Guangming Temple darkened. The Northern Yan martial arts was controlled by Chu Xiu. It was conceivable that there would be no place for them in the future. Chu Xiu stood up and calmly cupped his hands together. Thank you, Your Majesty. Xiang Li did not regret it. It seemed that his mind was still clear. He had been pushed onto the throne by Chu Xiu, and everyone had seen this. If Xiang Li regretted it now, not only would he have to face Chu Xiu's counterattack, it would also disappoint the other Northern Yan forces. If he dared to fall out with the person who personally helped him ascend to the throne, who would dare to work for him in the future? It was fine to be mean and ungrateful, but that was in the dark. Anyone who acted like this on the surface would have no friends. In fact, in the beginning, Xiang Li even wanted to make diabolism the national religion of the Northern Yan, but Chu Xiu rejected it. Yinma was a demon, Ming Mo was also a demon. Which demon was the national religion? Also, Chu Xiu was from the Yinma clan, but Situ Chi and the other old guys were also from the Yinma clan. Did they want to take advantage of the power that he had built? Wishful thinking. Therefore, Chu Xiu still asked Xiang Li to give him the absolute position in the Jianghu Hall. Only the Jianghu Hall truly belonged to Chu Xiu. Chapter 965. After the battle for the throne, the entire Northern Yan did not fall into chaos. Apart from the Jianghu Hall, the other forces did not change much. Of course, the Daoist and Buddhist sects left in disgrace. Xiang Li was supported to the throne by Chu Xiu, and the Jianghu Hall became the supreme force of the Northern Yan Jianghu. If the Daoist and Buddhist sects insisted on staying in the Northern Yan, they might be suppressed by Chu Xiu and the Northern Yan court. Then, there was no point in continuing to establish this branch. After everything was settled, everyone returned to the Jianghu hall. Wei Shuya looked at Lu Jianghe and asked, "Who is this fellow? Why have I never seen him before?" As an old member of the hidden demon clan, Wei Shuya knew almost all the demonic martial artists in the world, whether they were from the Bright Demon Clan, the Hidden Demon Clan, or some rogue cultivators, except for some weak rogue cultivators. However, Lu Jianghe was really unfamiliar to him. At this time, Lu Jianghe had not yet recovered to his peak. After absorbing Huangfu ancestors' qi and blood, he did not absorb much of the remaining qi and blood before the battle ended. Therefore, his current cultivation was almost at the middle stage of true fire spirit refinement, which was much weaker than when he was at his peak. Lu Jianghe heard this and said proudly, "Who are you?" "I am the Blood Sea Demon Venerable Lu Jianghe from 500 years ago." Wei Shuya frowned and said, "Blood Sea Demon Venerable? Blood Sea Demon Venerable is one of the 4 demon venerables?" At this time, Mei Qinglian seemed to remember something. She suddenly said, "You are the Blood Demon Hall Master Lu Jianghe who offended the sect master because of your cheap mouth. You don't have the strength of a demon venerable, but you still call yourself a demon venerable. My master mentioned you when he was telling me about the history of the holy sect. He said that you are the weirdest in the history of the holy sect." Hearing this, Lu Jianghe's face suddenly turned black. "Little girl, don't think that I won't hit you just because you are beautiful. Why are there so many gossipy women in the Shadow Demon sect? Fortunately, your master is dead. Otherwise, I will teach her a lesson 100 times and let her know what a weirdo is." Mei Qinglian's words directly hit Lu Jianghe's sore spot. Now, Lu Jianghe really wanted to hit her. However, after following Chu Xiu for such a long time, he had long suspected that Chu Xiu had an affair with this little girl from the Yin Demon sect. For Chu Xiu's sake, or rather, his fist, he endured. After all, the history of the Kunlun devil cult was so long. A hall master was already considered a high-ranking member of the Kunlun devil cult. Moreover, Lu Jianghe was really famous in the Kunlun devil cult in the past. Of course, as Mei Qinglian said, it was hard for a weirdo like him not to be famous. After all, the history of the Kunlun devil cult was so long. A hall master was already considered a high-ranking member of the Kunlun devil cult. Moreover, Lu Jianghe was really famous in the Kunlun devil cult in the past. Of course, as Mei Qinglian said, it was hard for a weirdo like him not to be famous. For so many years, there were martial artists under the Kunlun devil cult who betrayed and disobeyed. However, there was never a weirdo like Lu Jianghe. Because of his cheap mouth, he was thrown into the bead by Dugu Weiwei and was trapped for 500 years. Chu Xiu coughed and said, "I found the blood soul bead that sealed Lu Jianghe in the past. However, due to certain circumstances, he was only released now." Everyone present had a look of understanding. Obviously, they all knew what Chu Xiu was talking about. With Chu Xiu's character, if he did not have enough confidence, why would he release such a person who was unclear of friend or foe? Moreover, everyone present, including Wei Shuya, did not feel that there was anything wrong. The Kunlun devil cult was a matter of 500 years ago. If Dugu Weiwei appeared now, they would immediately kneel down and pledge their loyalty, following their sect master to conquer the world again. However, a hall master was not worthy of such treatment. Especially a weirdo like Lu Jianghe, they indeed could not bring themselves to respect him. After the battle for the throne in northern Yen was settled, Wei Shuya was going to leave northern Yen with Chu Wuji and return to eastern Qi. Chu Xiu originally wanted Wei Shuya to settle down in northern Yen. After all, northern Yen was now his territory. However, Wei Shuya refused. He still had to return to eastern Qi to pack some things. To be more precise, he had to deal with some people. As for the other people of the Immortal clan, Wei Shuya was really disappointed. If the Immortal clan relied on them, they would have been destroyed 8 times. This time, Chu Xiu had completely risen in northern Yen. Situ Chi and the others had gone too far. Wei Shuya was not afraid of completely falling out with them. He was ready to change his previous attitude of not caring about anything and recruit the rogue martial artists of the Yinma clan. These people were the future hope of the Yinma clan. They were not as wily as Situ Chi and the others. They were worth cultivating. After Wei Shuya left, Chu Xiu took out the blood-red spear he had taken from ancestor Huangfu and asked Lu Jianghe, "Can this spear be repaired?" Lu Jianghe looked it over and said, "Of course it can be repaired. However, you need to use the bones of a heaven and earth mysterious realm expert to repair it. Where can you find such a thing? I can give you a few suggestions. Go to Windcloud Sword Mound and have a look. There is more than one top-notch swordsman buried there. There must be a heaven and earth mysterious realm expert among them." Chu Xiu said grumpily, "Of course there is more than one swordsman buried there. There must be a heaven and earth mysterious realm expert buried there. If I go to Windcloud Sword Mound now, I will be courting death." Previously, when the nameless old man from Windcloud Sword Tomb made a move, he immediately took out a sword soul. Only the heavens knew what else was in Windcloud Sword Tomb. With Chu Xiu's current strength, going to Windcloud Sword Tomb to dig up graves was simply courting death. Lu Jianghe shrugged and said, "Then there is no other way. Apart from digging graves, do you want to kill a heaven and earth mysterious realm expert on the spot?" Mei Qinglian, who was at the side, listened to their conversation and felt slightly speechless. No wonder her master said that the Hall Master of the Blood Demon Hall was a weirdo. Now it seemed that it was true. He was extremely unreliable. Chu Xiu was too lazy to talk nonsense with Lu Jianghe. He said directly, "During this time, the power of Jianghu Hall will be redistributed to the entire Jianghu. Let's not care about the previous grievances. Now, if you encounter anyone who resists, kill them directly. If there is trouble, look for Lu Jianghe directly. If Lu Jianghe can't solve it, look for Master Shang for help. In short, no matter what happens during this time, don't disturb my retreat." Lu Jianghe was slightly dissatisfied and said, "Chu Xiu, are you using me as a hatchet man?" He was the dignified blood demon lord. Well, even if this title was not recognized, the position of the Hall Master of the Blood Demon Hall was still recognized. In the past, even the 4 great demon lords were not qualified to order him around. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "If you are not a hatchet man, what are you? Don't tell me you want to freeload in the Jianghu Hall. Of course, you can choose to leave. I won't stop you. However, are you sure that your identity as a remnant of the Kunlun devil cult can be unrestrained in the current Jianghu?" Lu Jianghe trembled when he heard this. He really did not have this confidence. The powerhouses in the Jianghu 500 years ago were very strong, and they were not weak now. The old celestial master of the celestial master mansion who had lived for 500 years, the bald donkeys of the Great Brilliance Temple and Subodhi Monastery, and some low-key righteous powerhouses. Lu Jianghe did not have the confidence to deal with them. If he stayed in Jianghu Hall, at least he would have the protection of Shang Tianliang, who was finally a normal heaven and earth metaphysic realm powerhouse. Of course, the most important thing was that Lu Jianghe could not figure out the relationship between Chu Xiu and Patriarch Dugu. The unknown was the most terrifying. Lu Jianghe was not afraid of others, but he was still a little afraid of Dugu Weiwei. Therefore, even if he was very unhappy, Lu Jianghe had to obediently prepare to stay in Jianghu Hall as a hatchet man. Of course, it was not bad to think in another direction. His strength had not recovered yet. He still had the opportunity to make a move in Jianghu Hall. As he fought, he might return to his peak. At this time, Mei Qinglian did not care about Lu Jianghe's whereabouts. When she heard that Chu Xiu was going to retreat and couldn't be disturbed, she suddenly said, "Are you going to break through to the real fire spiritual refinement realm?" Although Chu Xiu would always go into closed-door training, it was just a normal closed-door training. If anything happened, Chu Xiu could come out at any time. But this time, Chu Xiu was so serious. Obviously, this retreat was very important for him. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "It's almost there. I have already reached the bottleneck before, but you know the bottleneck of real pellet state to the real fire spiritual refinement realm. What you need is comprehension, not a forced breakthrough, so I have never specifically cared about it. This time, it's all thanks to this blood-red vine. I saw some things in it and also comprehended some things. If nothing goes wrong during this closed-door cultivation, I'll most likely be able to step into the true fire spirit refinement realm." The scenes of the past that he had seen in the blood-red handkerchief had helped Chu Xiu greatly. Not only had it allowed him to comprehend the solitary egoistic saber intent, but it had also caused his previously firm bottleneck to loosen. This time, it was almost certain that Chu Xiu would step into the true fire spirit refinement realm. Of course, accidents could not be ruled out. After all, Chu Xiu was the only person in the entire Jianghu who had reached the true fire spirit refinement realm and the true fire spirit refinement realm at the same time. Looking at Chenqing Di, he should have given up the plan of real fire spiritual refinement realm. He was ready to prove his strength directly and cultivate his physical body to the extreme peak. He could even reach the point of breaking through the barriers of heaven and earth and step into the realm of heaven and earth with his physical body. Therefore, now that Chu Xiu was breaking through like this, he could be regarded as the first person in the martial world. The road ahead was unpredictable. It was hard to say if there would be any accidents. Of course, Chu Xiu did not say these things, but the others in the Jianghu hall were very excited. The stronger Chu Xiu was, the more at ease they were his subordinates. With such a powerhouse as the boss, no one would be unwilling. After instructing everything, Chu Xiu went to the secret room to retreat. Lu Jianghe shrugged and looked at Mei Qinglian. "Little girl, call me Sir Demon Lord from now on. Tell me, what should we do next?" Mei Qinglian looked up at the burly Lu Jianghe. He was really good material to be a fighter. Chu Xiu had a good eye. She showed a charming smile and said, "Previously, some people in the martial world saw that the Jianghu hall had withdrawn its strength. They thought that the Jianghu hall was afraid, but they did a lot of outrageous things. So, of course, we are going to kill people. Let's go, Sir Demon Lord." Chapter 966. The realm of true fire spirit refinement was very confusing on the road of martial arts. Stepping from the innate realm to the real pellet state required the perception of martial arts. Generally speaking, the danger of condensing the real pellet state was very small. Only a few people would have accidents in this realm. When he reached the true fire spirit refinement state, he needed to use his own internal power and true fire to temper his essence to the extent of communicating with heaven and earth. True fire spirit refinement state needed to be carried out continuously, but true fire spirit refinement only needed a moment. But this moment was a huge bottleneck because you didn't know when you should be able to carry out spirit refinement. Essence was not a joke. If it was not done well, it would result in serious injuries. If it was serious, it would even endanger one's life. Therefore, most of the real pellet state martial artists were actually stuck in this bottleneck, waiting and comprehending, but they never found the bottleneck. This step even stopped many geniuses. Some martial artists who were on the Longhu list in the past had stepped into the real pellet state early, but they couldn't find the bottleneck in the real pellet state for the rest of their lives. There were many of them. Of course, there were also people who chose to forcefully refine their souls with true fire. This was possible, but the consequences were extremely miserable, and the success rate was pitifully low. Most people damaged their souls because of this, causing their cultivation to plummet or even be crippled. There were never any shortcuts on the road of martial arts. Once you understand it, you will master it. Once you break through, you will cross the bottleneck. It was that simple. Although Chu Xiu thought that he had stayed in the real pellet state for a long time, in the eyes of others, his speed was simply amazing. In fact, the reason why Chu Xiu was able to find the bottleneck and break through it so quickly was because of the blood-red illusion. Of course, it would have been better if the illusion had been longer. Perhaps he would have been able to comprehend something else. In the secret chamber, Chu Xiu's entire body was enveloped by a faint golden light of his essence soul. Behind him, countless golden essence condensed into his own vague appearance, and the heaven and earth's essence began to flock into the golden essence. It was rather strenuous for ordinary people to use the power of their souls to move the world. However, as soon as Chu Xiu's soul appeared, it began to actively absorb the spiritual qi of the world. It was obvious what level Chu Xiu's cultivation had reached. The other people in the Jianghu hall also noticed this strange phenomenon, but they didn't care. Official Chu's breakthrough was imminent, and it was normal for all kinds of anomalies to occur. All they could do was guard the subduing martial hall for official Chu and not let outsiders disturb him. At this moment, in the secret chamber, Chu Xiu's essence soul had become extremely dazzling after being enhanced by the essence qi of heaven and earth. In the next moment, the gold-and-silver true fire of internal force began to burn above Chu Xiu's true core of martial arts, wrapping around Chu Xiu's soul. In the next moment, an extreme pain enveloped Chu Xiu. He could not help but grunt as his face paled. After experiencing the real fire body refining, Chu Xiu had already experienced the pain of real fire burning. He thought he could withstand this feeling. However, who knew that the feeling of real fire body refining and real fire spirit refining was completely different? The feeling of his soul being burned by the internal force real fire was even more stimulating. Of course, compared with the power that he was about to obtain, this pain was nothing at all. Anyway, Chu Xiu had never heard of a martial artist in the real fire spirit refining realm who failed because he couldn't bear the pain when breaking through. Under the burning of the internal force real fire, the golden light of Chu Xiu's soul became more and more magnificent. In the end, it seemed to melt directly, turning into a pool of liquid and blending into the world. At this moment, Chu Xiu was shrouded in an extremely mysterious feeling. He seemed to have become a part of this world, a gust of wind, a speck of dust, a drop of water. This feeling was very strange. Previously, he looked at the world with his own eyes, and he saw the appearance. At this time, he looked at the world from the perspective of a speck of dust, and it was another appearance. Like a mustard seed, a world in a grain of sand. Heaven and earth, the universe was primitive. Yin and yang reversed, the Tao disappeared, and the demons rose. The three branches of Tao, Buddha, and demon reached the same goal by different means. Any kind of power originated from this world. The real fire spirit refining realm also triggered this world. At this moment, Chu Xiu's entire body was shrouded in that mysterious feeling. Even the pain of the internal force real fire spirit refining realm had been forgotten. When Chu Xiu's soul returned to his body again, the golden light of the soul penetrated his body in an instant. Countless heaven and earth essence force surged into Chu Xiu's body, and even formed a huge essence force vortex in the sky above the Jianghu hall. This scene attracted the attention of all the people in Yanjing City. Beigong Bailey, who was equivalent to the real fire spirit refining realm, was shocked and stunned. Such power had never appeared when they stepped into the real fire spirit refining realm. Previously, Chu Xiu already had the strength to resist 90% of the real fire spirit refining realm. Now that he had both refined his soul and body, could his strength have soared to the mysterious heaven and earth realm? Even Beigong Bailey was afraid of this. How old was Chu Xiu? Although the Longhu leaderboard had been updated, and he was not considered the latest generation of martial artists in the pugilistic world, he was definitely a young man. In the end, he had become a supreme existence in the pugilistic world. This was somewhat unacceptable. In the palace, although Xiangli did not understand what was going on, he had heard the news from others. However, he did not have any reaction. The throne was already stable. Although Xiangli did not need Chu Xiu as much as before, he was not stupid enough to become enemies with Chu Xiu. As the Northern Yan Emperor, Xiangli was in charge of the imperial court, while Chu Xiu was in charge of the Northern Yan pugilistic world. There was no conflict between the two, and they even needed each other. Xiangli needed Chu Xiu's reputation and power behind him to help him stabilize the people's hearts. On the other hand, Chu Xiu also needed Xiangli's promise to let him legitimately control the Northern Yan pugilistic world. Therefore, as long as Xiangli's head was not squeezed by the door, he would not do anything stupid. The powerful vitality storm in the sky above the Jianghu Hall lasted for a quarter of an hour before it dissipated. At this time, Chu Xiu's state was very strange. His spirit had hidden in his body, but his eyes contained endless divine light. It was as if the sun, moon, and stars were rotating in his eyes. It was very magical. It was not until a quarter of an hour later that this magical state disappeared. Chu Xiu opened his eyes and took a deep breath. Is this the power that the real fire spiritual refinement realm should have? To be precise, the real fire spiritual refinement realm did not have the most direct power, but the perception of the world. How much power you could borrow depended entirely on how deep your perception of the world was. After exiting, there were a lot less people in the Jianghu Hall. The first person to greet him was actually Mu Zi. Seeing Chu Xiu exiting, Mu Zi's eyes suddenly lit up. She said in surprise, "Young Master Chu, have you stepped into the real fire spiritual refinement realm?" Although Mu Zi knew that with Chu Xiu's strength, stepping into the real fire spiritual refinement realm should be a matter of course, she still couldn't help but be surprised. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "It was quite smooth. There were no accidents. By the way, where are the others?" Mu Zi said, "They are outside reorganizing the order of the Northern Yan martial arts world. The assassins of the Blue Dragon Society that I brought with me were also taken out. They are in charge of intelligent surveillance. I stayed here mainly because I was worried that something would go wrong when young Master Chu was in seclusion." During this time, the Jianghu Hall was very busy. Even the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society that Mu Zi brought with her were temporarily requisitioned. Although Mu Zi was a little unhappy with Mei Qinglian, she also knew the severity of the matter. Therefore, she did not hesitate to send the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society out. These assassins of the Blue Dragon Society not only knew how to kill people. As assassins, they were also good at intelligent surveillance. Of course, there were times when they failed, but this time, it was their turn to display their strengths. If they were discovered, they would directly kill the other party and clean up the corpse. Then, they would be able to perfectly hide. After asking about the current situation of the Jianghu Hall, Chu Xiu temporarily left and went to the mall. After stepping into the true fire spirit refinement realm, Chu Xiu also wanted to try to see how big the gap between him and the existence of the heaven and earth mysterious realm was. It was easy to cause trouble if he fought with others. It was best for Shang Tianliang to be the sandbag. In the mall, this small city of 10,000 people had been very well taken care of. Perhaps it was because of the psychological trauma of staying in the Green City, there was almost no trace of yellow in the entire mall. The houses and walls were covered with green vines, and the streets were also filled with green trees. The people in the mall seemed to have some kind of obsession with green plants. For a moment, Chu Xiu thought that he was in West Chu. The Northern Yan territory was not like spring all year round. On the contrary, there were 4 distinct seasons. Winter was a real bitter cold place. Although it was not winter now, it was already autumn. However, the mall was still green. It was obvious that someone was using a formation to stimulate these plants. It was very extravagant. When Chu Xiu found Shang Tianliang was still planting vegetables with a small hoe. Chu Xiu didn't know if he could finish all the vegetables he planted. At the heaven and earth mysterious realm, it was a competition of who had a deeper understanding of the heaven and earth. The stronger the power of heaven and earth, the inner cultivation of the body, and the outer control of the heaven and earth. Therefore, at this realm, except for some people who practiced physical body cultivation methods and tempered their bodies, almost no other martial artists would foolishly accumulate their own internal strength. They mainly focused on perception. Therefore, except for the boring life and death seclusion, people in this realm could do anything. It was said that Su Ci of the Great Light Temple liked to lock himself in the meditation room to recite Buddhist scriptures. The old celestial master also liked to bask in the sun. Shang Tianliang liked to plant vegetables. This was not strange. Seeing Chu Xiu coming, Shang Tianliang could almost see the changes in Chu Xiu at a glance. Moreover, he had already guessed it. The mall was not far from Yanjing City. Only a blind person would not be able to see such a large energy storm. Putting away the hoe, Shang Tianliang said lightly, "Are you here to get beaten up?" Chapter 967. Shang Tianliang was a shrewd person, so he didn't need Chu Xiu to say anything to be able to guess that Chu Xiu had come looking for him right after he broke through. It was none other than because Shang Tianliang had stepped into the true fire spirit refinement stage and his strength had improved greatly. Chu Xiu wanted to test his skills and see exactly what level Shang Tianliang was at. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "What Master Shang said is wrong. I'm not here to be beaten, but to spar." Shang Tianliang sneered, "Spar? Although you have now reached the real fire god refinement realm and the real fire body refinement realm at the same time, I'm afraid that even the ancient martial artists have not done it. However, heaven and earth mystic illumination realm is already another world. It is not so easy to surpass it. Don't care if you are beaten or spar. Since you are here, let's find a place to fight." As Shang Tianliang said, he followed Chu Xiu directly to an empty valley outside the city. Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and said, "Master Shang, then I'm going to make a move." Shang Tianliang said lightly, "Come on, if you want to test your true strength, I will not hold back. Don't blame me for bullying you later." As Shang Tianliang's voice sounded, Chu Xiu had already blasted out a punch. In an instant, his figure disappeared in a flash. The next moment, he was already swinging his fist at Shang Tianliang. This was not a secret technique that allowed him to break through space. It was just that Chu Xiu's speed was too fast. The strength of his physical body, coupled with the support of the surrounding world origin energy and the power of wind, caused his speed to skyrocket. From the real pellet state to the real fire god refinement realm, his own internal power and true qi actually did not increase. The reason why the gap between the two was so huge was that the existence of the real fire god refinement realm no longer needed to absorb the world's essence and then transform it into his own true qi like when he was in the real pellet state. A casual blow could already borrow any kind of power between heaven and earth. Shang Tianliang frowned slightly and pushed his palm out slowly. It seemed slow, but there was a quagmire-like force that wrapped around Chu Xiu. But in the next moment, the vast and enormous fist force descended from the sky, shattering mountains and rivers. That fist shockingly contained the strongest fist intent of the mountain and sea fist scripture. The punch was split into two, with his body first. Chu Xiu's punch, which had been triggered by his own strength, finally landed. Shang Tianliang used his finger as a sword and pointed it out. In an instant, countless storms in the air condensed into a sword, shattering the power of that punch. The heavenly law war case in Chu Xiu's hand turned into a saber and swept out. The powerful saber will tore through the void and completely shattered Shang Tianliang's palm force. As the sea-breaking saber descended, the surging waves of primordial qi shook the heavens and the earth. They even filled up the valley and let out a whistling sound. For a saber technique at the level of the seven limits, the stronger one's strength was, the more powerful it would be. If Chu Xiu's saber had been in the sea, it might have been able to temporarily split the seawater in half. Shang Tianliang raised his eyebrows and grabbed with one hand. In an instant, endless water vapor in the world condensed in his hand, forming a long staff that was hundreds of feet long. As the rod smashed down, the power seemed to be able to tear the heavens and split the earth, emitting a series of loud rumbles. The long staff collided with Chu Xiu's saber. In an instant, water vapor scattered, but it was at this moment that the scattered water vapor turned into endless fine sword qi, wrapping around Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu used the heaven's sun gazing at air skill to the extreme, dodging the attack of the water sword qi. At the next moment, Shang Tianliang formed a seal with both hands. In an instant, all the primordial qi around him danced, turning fire into a saber, water into a sword, wind into a spear. All sorts of powers evolved into various martial arts, condensing in a space and exploding completely. Without saying a word, Chu Xiu's body flashed and he escaped from the valley. The huge valley was directly crushed by Shang Tianliang's attack, turning into a small mountain. Chu Xiu's expression was solemn. He already knew the outcome. He was still no match for someone at the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Shang Tianliang's figure walked out of the ruins of the valley with a proud smile on his face. How's this nature-encompassing technique? This isn't something I learned from the ancient records of my ancestors, but something I created after condensing my own comprehension to great success. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "It's very strong." He wasn't complimenting Shang Tianliang, but the power of this move was indeed strong enough. Of course, if it were Chu Xiu who had reached the mysterious heaven and earth realm, it wouldn't be difficult for him to achieve this level of power. City Lord Shang, how far do you feel my strength is from the mysterious heaven and earth realm? Shang Tianliang pondered for a moment and said, "It's a little hard to say. Your current physical body has reached the true fire body tempering realm, and it's enough to fight warriors of the same level with your physical body alone. But at the same time, your own realm has also reached the true fire body tempering realm. The addition of the two is not as simple as 1 plus 1. They complement each other, and your combat power will multiply. In my opinion, with your current strength, I wouldn't be able to defeat you when I just walked out of the green capital. Of course, you can forget about defeating me as well, and it's even to the extent that you'll definitely be the one to suffer in the end." Hearing Shang Tianliang say this, Chu Xiu understood that his current realm was indeed very awkward. He had already touched the bottom line of the mysterious heaven and earth realm, but if he were to fight with a real mysterious heaven and earth realm expert, he was still inferior. Even if it was Shang Tianliang who had just left Merchant City, he could rely on his strong physical body to exhaust him to death. Of course, in the true fire body tempering realm, the current Chu Xiu had the power to fight with everyone except for those freaks like Kong Dongming. But this was also within Chu Xiu's expectations. If he could really stand shoulder to shoulder with the mysterious heaven and earth tempering realm under the spirit and body tempering realm, then Chen Qingdi probably wouldn't have gone down the dark path. After all, he was the first to try the true fire body tempering realm. Oh right, City Lord Shang, if you were to fight with the divine monk Rama now, who would win? Shang Tianliang shook his head and said, "I would still lose, but I wouldn't lose in such an ugly way." Chu Xiu nodded. It seemed that the mysterious heaven and earth realm was the same. The difference in strength between them was also huge. Rama had stepped into the mysterious heaven and earth realm for a long time. The inheritance of Subodhi Monastery was also stronger than the inheritance of Merchant City. It was not surprising that Rama was stronger. Chu Xiu stayed in Merchant City for a few more days. He was learning martial arts with Shang Tianliang. Of course, it could also be said that he was beaten. He had just stepped into a new realm. Instead of sitting and stabilizing his cultivation, it was better to familiarize himself with this realm through actual combat. When Chu Xiu had just returned to Jianghu Hall, Mei Qinglian and the others had also returned. Obviously, the entire northern Yan Jianghu had been suppressed by him. The great Guangming temple had left, and so had the Chunyang Dao sect. Jianghu Hall was personally announced by the Northern Yan Imperial Court to be in charge of the Northern Yan martial arts world. They had to have strength and status. Therefore, when the martial artists of Jianghu Hall were dispatched, 99% of the forces were terrified. It was not a big deal to follow your heart. If you lost your life, you would not even have the right to be terrified. Of course, there were some who had a tough attitude or secretly played dirty tricks. These people were previously ordered by Chu Xiu not to be tolerated. Therefore, they were all ruthlessly killed by Mei Qinglian. At this moment, someone outside sent news that Lu Fengxian had also returned. Walking into the hall and seeing so many people there, Lu Fengxian scratched his head and said, "I haven't been gone for long. I didn't expect such a big thing to happen here. Hey, Brother Chu, you have broken through. Congratulations." After saying that, Lu Fengxian suddenly said, "By the way, Brother Chu, this time in the Northern Territory, I found something. There is good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear?" Chu Xiu said directly, "The bad news." Lu Fengxian was stunned. Brother Chu did not play by the rules. He smiled bitterly and said, "Let's say it first. When I went to the northern wilderness to cultivate, I accidentally found a place. Shui Wuxiang and the others told me that this place should be the legendary primitive devil cave. I believe that everyone in the hidden devil lineage should have heard of this name." Chu Xiu was also stunned when he heard this. Although he didn't know what this primitive devil cave was, he had jokingly said to others that Lu Fengxian's luck was unparalleled. Maybe she would encounter some fortuitous encounters when she went out. But he didn't expect that his joke would come true. Lu Fengxian actually found something. At this time, Chu Xiu turned his gaze to Lu Jianghe and the others. He found that Lu Jianghe and the others had an indescribable look on their faces. Chu Xiu couldn't help but be puzzled. What kind of place is this primitive devil cave? Lu Jianghe calmed himself down and said, "What kind of place is the primitive devil cave? No one can say for sure. The primitive devil cave exists in another space, so every time it appears, the place is different. Moreover, the time is not fixed. No one knows when it will appear. It's also possible that it has already appeared, but no one has discovered it. It should be said that the name Primitive Devil Cave was given by later generations. It should be a space that has existed since the birth of the world, a sacred land of my devil path. That place is filled with evil demonic chi, countless dangers, and also countless opportunities. Over the years, countless devil path powerhouses have entered that place. As long as they can come out, their strength must have greatly increased. Some things are just legends, so I'll talk about something that's more recent. In the past, the sect leader entered the primitive devil cave once. Others don't know what he saw, but I know one thing. The sect leader's devil blade, listen to the spring rain, came out of the primitive devil cave. Hearing this, even Chu Xiu's heart shook. He didn't expect the origin of the primitive devil cave to be so great. Even now, Chu Xiu didn't forget the scarlet listen to the spring rain in the illusion. It was a powerful blade light that was like moonlight. At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something. He hurriedly asked Lu Fengxian, "What was the bad news you mentioned before?" Lu Fengxian smiled bitterly. Shui Wuxiang said that that place is related to the devil path. Originally, I wanted to seal it to prevent others from discovering it, and then send the news to Brother Chu. In the end, I didn't expect it to backfire. That kind of place is not something that Shui Wuxiang can seal. As soon as Shui Wuxiang used the array, the primitive devil cave released an even more powerful fluctuation. I reckon that it has already been discovered by the Great Light Temple and some other people who are cultivating in the far north. Chapter 968. The discovery of Primitive Demon Cave was indeed a pleasant surprise, but it wasn't a pleasant surprise for others to discover it. However, Lu Fengxian was truly a good friend. Lu Fengxian also cultivated a demonic path martial art, and Lu Wenho's Nine Heavens Devil Golden Body was a genuine demonic art. Therefore, Lu Fengxian was the first person to discover Primitive Demon Cave. He could have gone in and explored it first, but because he wanted to inform Chu Xiu of this news, he gave up this opportunity and ran over to inform Chu Xiu. On the side, Pang Hu rubbed his head and said, "I say, what kind of bad news is this? Didn't you say that Primitive Demon Cave is filled with evil spirits and is specially prepared for the demonic path? Then why are you worried about the righteous path finding out? In the entire northern Yan, the only demonic path influence is the extreme evil sect. It's easy to deal with them." Mei Qinglian looked at Pang Hu as if she was looking at an idiot. "Do you know what it means to harm others without benefiting yourself? There are some things that are useless to the righteous path sects even if they obtain them. They don't want you to obtain them. When the demons rise, the Tao vanishes. Weakening the opponent is the same as strengthening yourself. Don't you understand such a simple truth? Moreover, Primitive Demon Cave doesn't only have things suitable for demonic path martial artists, there are also some heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Although they are more suitable for demonic path martial artists, there is no difference between righteous and demonic path martial artists. Demonic path martial artists can use them, righteous path martial artists can also use them." Pang Hu grinned. These hypocrites really thought too much. They were truly sinister. Chu Xiu said, "Since it's like this, we shouldn't delay any further. We'll head straight to Primitive Demon Cave." "That's right, call City Lord Shang along." Shang Tianliang wasn't a demonic path martial artist, and his cultivation method wasn't related to the demonic path. But intuition told Chu Xiu that once Primitive Demon Cave appeared, some people wouldn't let demonic path martial artists have an easy time. Just like what Mei Qinglian had said before, there were some things that they couldn't use, but they couldn't let others obtain them. Although harming others didn't benefit them, they still had to be harmed. Chu Xiu never believed that the righteous path people had any moral integrity to speak of. Lu Fengxian discovered that the Primitive Devil Cave was very far away. It was already in the northern wasteland. In fact, the entire northern Yan was not small. If you looked at it on a map, the northern Yan was no smaller than eastern Qi. But in reality, the real area ruled by the northern Yan was less than 1/10 of the entire northern land. The rest of the land was in the extreme north, with very few people living there. Only a few martial arts forces such as the Floating Snow City, the Great Light Temple, and the Evil Pole sect resided here. As for the far north, it was the far north wastelands. That place was the true bitter cold land. Apart from some martial artists who wanted to try their luck and go there to find some heavenly treasures that grew in the world of ice and snow, only some martial monks from the Great Light Temple would come here to train and temper their bodies. Lu Fengxian went to that kind of place. She wanted to use the harsh environment to temper her state of mind and the strength of her body. Primitive Demon Cave was located in the depths of the northern wilderness. Everyone continued walking for several days, but all they saw was a vast expanse of white snow. If it weren't for a martial artist's innate perception being amazing, they might have already lost their way here. But at this time, Chu Xiu also sensed a faint and powerful demonic energy coming from a direction. It was extremely pure. That should be the location of the Primitive Devil Cave. Seeing this, Chu Xiu shook his head slightly. Being able to sense it from so far away, the Primitive Devil Cave had probably been discovered long ago. The news should have already spread out. The far north wasteland was inaccessible, but in fact, there were still people there. That's right, City Lord Shang, are there any records about the Primitive Devil Cave in the ancient records of the Shang clan? Shang Tianliang shook his head and said, I have never heard of the Primitive Devil Cave, but this does not prove that it did not exist in the ancient times. Perhaps the Primitive Devil Cave was common knowledge in the ancient times, everyone knew about it, so it was not recorded by the ancestors of the Shang clan. Also, the name Primitive Devil Cave was given after the ancient times. Whether it was called this before the ancient times, no one knows. Chu Xiu nodded, feeling slightly regretful. He had limited information about the Primitive Devil Cave. Whether it was Lu Jianghe or Mei Qinglian, they had only heard of the Primitive Devil Cave. As for what was inside, Dugu Weiwei did not tell others. Perhaps the 4 demon venerables would know, but Lu Jianghe definitely did not know. Although the Primitive Devil Cave had opened many times, each time it was in an extremely remote place, so the number of people who entered each time was not too many. In addition, there were some who did not return, so the information inside was not very clear. Wei Shuya had followed the other 4 heavenly demons of the 9 heavenly mountains and obtained many ancient records about the Kunlun Devil cult. He might know more than Lu Jianghe, a member of the Kunlun Devil cult. But now, Wei Shuya was not here. Although Chu Xiu had sent someone to inform Wei Shuya, it would still take some time to travel from eastern Qi to here. Everyone did not delay, and directly rushed to the place where the Primitive Devil Cave was. After rushing at full speed for 3 days, everyone finally arrived at the place where the Primitive Devil Cave was. But as expected, someone had arrived first, and they were all familiar people. One side was the people of the Great Light Temple, and the other side was the people of the evil Zenith sect. The people from the Great Guangming Temple should have arrived first. Abbot Su Ci, the seat of honor of the 3 major monasteries, Su Yun, Su Jing, and Su Du had all arrived. Even from the 6 major martial courtyards, they had brought more than a dozen monks from the Real Pellet State and Real Fire Spirit Refinement State. This strength was simply shocking. Were they going to snatch the treasure, or were they going to start another war between the righteous and demonic? However, after the Great Radiance Temple arrived, they didn't enter to explore. Instead, under the leadership of Su Jing, a group of Karma Zen Hall disciples were setting up an array formation. Clearly, they wanted to completely seal off this Primitive Devil Cave and prevent outsiders from entering. Regarding the Primitive Devil Cave, the Great Light Temple naturally knew about it. But because they knew about it, they knew how important it was. In the past, Dugu Weiwei had entered it, and his strength had greatly improved. He also brought out the demonic blade, listen to the spring rain. This time, when the Primitive Devil Cave opened, there might be some evil things inside. The Great Light Temple was not interested in what was inside, but sealing it was equivalent to sealing a source of trouble. The extreme evil sect arrived after the Great Light Temple. Seeing that the Great Light Temple was sealing the Primitive Devil Cave, the sect master of the extreme evil sect, Shengbei Xian, smiled bitterly and said, "I say, fellow eminent monks, you don't have to be so ruthless, right? The Primitive Devil Cave just appeared and you sealed it. Don't you want to go in and explore it?" If it were anyone else, Shengbei Xian would have already made a move. But at this time, Su Ci, an existence in the heaven and earth mystic realm, was meditating with his eyes closed. Even if Shengbei Xian had 2 guts, he would not dare to make a move. But at this moment, he was very anxious. A legendary existence like the Primordial Devil Cave had actually appeared in the northern lands, right next to his evil Zenith sect. This was simply luck bestowed upon him by the heavens. In the end, this bunch of bald donkeys from the Great Light Temple actually wanted to seal off the Primordial Devil Cave. Su Yun said lightly, "This kind of evil land that brings disaster to the world, the sooner it is sealed, the better. Shengbei Xian, your evil extreme sect and my Great Light Temple have been neighbors for so long, and you have not done too many things out of line. Now that you have seen the Primitive Devil Cave, you can't sit still. This time, the Primitive Devil Cave appearing in the northern lands might be the will of the heavens, allowing my Great Light Temple to seal this source of trouble." At this time, Chu Xiu's voice came from afar. "Will of the heavens? When did Great Master Su Yun switch to fortune-telling? If you want to do it, it should be Great Master Su Jing. Maybe this is the will of the heavens, and this Primitive Devil Cave should belong to me, Chu Xiu." When Chu Xiu and the people from the subduing martial hall appeared here, the monks of the Great Light Temple frowned. The forces under Chu Xiu were not as easy to deal with as the evil extreme sect, especially when Chu Xiu had a mysterious heaven and earth mystic realm powerhouse, Shang Tianliang, under his command. When Xingbeixian saw Chu Xiu coming, his eyes lit up. Although Chu Xiu and he did not belong to the same camp, with one being the bright devil and the other being the hidden devil, they were all people of the demonic Dao. However, everyone was a member of the demonic Dao. The Temple of Great Light and the bald donkeys were doing this kind of thing that harmed others without benefiting themselves, so everyone in the demonic Dao should naturally be united against a common enemy. Su Yun frowned and said, Chu Xiu, you have just settled the matter of the Northern Yen throne, and now you still want this primitive devil cave. It is not a good thing to get too much. Once the primitive devil cave appears, it will be accompanied by endless blood and slaughter. My Great Light Temple is in the Northern Yen, and your foundation, Chu Xiu, is also in the Northern Yen. Do you want the entire Northern Yen to be involved in this chaos? Chu Xiu shook his head and said, Great Master Su Yun, you are an eminent monk of the Buddhist sect. Do you not understand the principle of human greed? I want the power of the Northern Yen, and I also want the things in the primitive devil cave. It is not good to do things that harm others without benefiting ourselves too much. Since Great Master Su Yun does not want to give it to us, then we can only take it by force. Seeing the attitude of those people from the Great Light Temple, Chu Xiu already knew what they meant. The rise of the demonic Dao was something that no one wanted to see. If it was anything else, the Great Light Temple would not care and would not send out such a strong force. The key was that the last time the primitive devil cave appeared was 500 years ago. Dugu Weiwei entered and his strength improved greatly. He also brought out the demon blade. Listen to the spring rain. Although the reason why Dugu Weiwei was able to dominate the world was not because of the primitive devil cave, but because he was Dugu Weiwei. But the words primitive devil cave were like a thorn in the hearts of the righteous path sects, stabbing into their hearts. They did not want anyone to enter the primitive devil cave and become the second Dugu Weiwei. Therefore, after the Great Light Temple learned of this news, they immediately came to intercept it. They did not even see what was inside and wanted to seal it. Chapter 969. The Great Light Temple could not stop the things in the primitive devil cave even if they wanted to. Moreover, with Chu Xiu's current strength, although he did not have the qualifications to challenge the Great Light Temple, he would not be as helpless as Xingbeixian in this situation. He turned to Shang Tianliang and said, Temple Master Shang, it's up to you. You've already fought against Rama of the Sabodhi Monastery, and now it's Su Ci of the Great Light Temple. You've also fought against the mystic enlightenment realm powerhouses of the North and South Buddhist sects. There aren't many in the martial world who can do this. Shang Tianliang glared at Chu Xiu in annoyance. This brat had once again found himself an extremely troublesome opponent. Although Shang Tianliang came from Emerald City, since he had come to the Jianghu, he naturally had to understand the distribution of the various factions in the Jianghu and some powerhouses. The abbot of the Great Light Temple, Su Ci, was the standard example of a well-prepared person. At first, everyone thought that the abbot of the Great Light Temple was too mediocre. In the end, he directly participated in the righteous and demonic wars of the moon-worshipping cult and fought fiercely with Yi Shaonan. This strength was not ordinary, and Shang Tianliang was not confident. However, since they had already come this far, they had no choice but to fight. Shang Tianliang had no choice but to step forward. The powerful aura around him stirred up the weather, causing the already bone-chilling winds to blow in the northern reaches, causing a violent storm. Su Ci opened his eyes and looked at Shang Tianliang. He said in a low voice, Almsgiver, I can see that you are not of the demonic path. As an arcane heaven and earth powerhouse, you are restrained by Chu Xiu. There must be some difficulties. If there is a hidden reason, the Great Light Temple can help you free yourself. Why are you helping the wicked and willingly falling into the demonic path? Shang Tianliang raised his eyebrows and said, Old monk, don't talk nonsense. Just fight. You are not as straightforward as the monks of the Subodhi monastery. If you want to fight, just fight. Why do you want to purify? A portion of the people in the shopping center were still eating sand in Emerald City. Of course, with the resources Chu Xiu had given them, they were much better off. In the entire Jianghu, no one had Chu Xiu's methods. If he was not restrained by Chu Xiu, who could he be restrained by? Moreover, after such a long time, Shang Tianliang could see the strength and power in Chu Xiu's hands. If the people of Merchant City suddenly appeared, it would not be a good thing. Even if Shang Tianliang said he was harmless. With such a sudden appearance, even if Shang Tianliang said he was harmless, no one would believe him. With such a force suddenly, no one would believe him. With the protection of Chu Xiu's forces, the appearance of Merchant City did not attract too much attention. Everyone first saw Chu Xiu, then the people from Merchant City. Therefore, even without those people in Green Capital, Shang Tianliang would not choose to fall out with Chu Xiu. Of course, Shang Tianliang would not be a hired thug for Chu Xiu. They would work together. If Chu Xiu wanted him to fight, he would have to offer something in return. Shang Tianliang's strength had improved tremendously. To be more precise, he had regained his normal strength. That was why he wanted to test himself against a regular expert on the sovereign ranking and see just how strong he had become. Therefore, Shang Tianliang couldn't be bothered to waste his breath on Su Ci. With a wave of his hand, the biting cold wind in the surroundings instantly condensed into a boundless blade that surged towards Su Ci. Su Ci sighed. He formed a Buddhist seal with his hand, and waves of Buddhist light radiated from his body. It was as if he was impervious to blades and spears. The blades of cold wind slashed against his Buddhist light and shattered. Shang Tianliang narrowed his eyes and took a step forward. Using snow as a spear, the endless snowstorm on the snowy wastelands turned into a long spear hundreds of meters long and pierced towards Su Ci. The power of the spear was terrifying. In the next moment, Su Ci sighed. In the Buddhist light behind him, a huge Buddha Dharma idol appeared. His hands formed a Buddhist seal, and the golden Buddhist light was like a bottomless pit, absorbing the power of Shang Tianliang's spear, completely shattering it. But before the power of the spear could dissipate, Shang Tianliang appeared in front of Su Ci and punched with enough force to shatter mountains and shatter rivers. Su Ci's face was emotionless as he faced Shang Tianliang's punch. He formed a fist and a deafening roar of a lion resounded through the world. Vajra Lion Seal. A powerful force suddenly struck, sending Shang Tianliang flying more than 10 meters away. The Great Light Temple's body-refining techniques were also at the pinnacle of Jianghu. Although Shang Tianliang's body was tempered in a cruel place like Ludu, perhaps he was more resistant to beatings, but in terms of strength, he was still inferior to Su Ci. Shang Tianliang narrowed his eyes and snorted coldly. Countless ice blades circled around his body as he charged towards Su Ci again. Previously, he had been suppressed by Rama. Now that it was Su Ci, although he was not confident, at least he would not be suppressed to death. He still had some room to fight back. Seeing Shang Tianliang engaged in a fierce battle, Chu Xiu also broke out in a cold sweat and said, "Attack." If the monks of the Great Light Temple did not want to give way, then he would beat them until they did. The people under Chu Xiu from the subduing martial hall had already attacked. At this time, Chu Xiu turned his gaze to Sheng Beixian and said lightly, "Sect leader Sheng, you are not going to just watch, are you?" Sheng Beixian laughed dryly and said, "Of course not, attack." As soon as he finished speaking, the omniscient sect also charged forward. Although Sheng Beixian looked good, in reality, he was an extremely slippery person. He always left some leeway when dealing with people. Even if he was from the bright demon lineage, he would not wholeheartedly help the moon-worshipping cult. Dong Huang Tai looked down on him. It was the same now. If Chu Xiu did not speak, he would really sit here and watch the show. He would wait for Chu Xiu and the others to finish attacking him before attacking. Of course, if he dared to do so now, Chu Xiu would dare to kill him first. After taking action, Chu Xiu's side directly rushed towards Virtual Cloud. Previously, he was defeated when fighting with Shang Tianliang. He was still not a match for the real heaven and earth metaphysic realm. But now, he wanted to see what was the difference between him and the powerhouses on the honor list who stood at the peak of the true fire spirit refinement realm. Seeing that Chu Xiu was rushing over, Suyun frowned. He could see that Chu Xiu had already stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm. His own strength had undoubtedly skyrocketed. This was not a good thing for the Great Light Temple or the entire righteous path. It could be said that they had watched Chu Xiu grow from a rising star of the diabolism to such a troublesome diabolism overlord. In the beginning, no one was determined to get rid of Chu Xiu. Now, it was not so easy to get rid of Chu Xiu. Even if Suyun felt the current strength of Chu Xiu, he no longer had absolute confidence that he could take down Chu Xiu. Demonic qi that blotted out the skies danced around Chu Xiu's body. As the demonic saber slashed down, the bone-chilling cold of the northern lands was shrouded in darkness. In an instant, demonic flames blotted out the skies. The power of Chu Xiu made Sheng Beishuan's expression change. Once upon a time, Chu Xiu, a junior of the diabolism lineage, had also grown to this level. With the power of this move, Chu Xiu was enough to compete with the top 3 existences on the ranking list. Su Yun, who was shrouded in the endless demon flame, chanted the name of Buddha. In the next moment, the shadow of a dragon condensed in the light of Buddha around him. The dragon roared and broke through the cover of the demon qi. The great mighty heavenly dragon seal. The power of this seal was extremely fierce. When it collided with Chu Xiu's saber, the demon qi and the light of Buddha clashed and exploded. The aftermath of the power even formed a huge storm around the two of them. Chu Xiu sheathed his blade and formed a seal. At the next moment, surging demonic aura condensed into a longbow in his hand, and the triple-link city annihilation arrow shot out explosively. At the instant the arrow was shot out, boundless flames of annihilation were already burning, even igniting the heaven and earth wherever it passed. In an instant, the world's vital qi was completely burnt away. In the face of this terrifying arrow, Suyun simply punched. Some familiar people saw that it was actually the most basic fist technique of the Great Light Temple, the Vajra fist. This fist technique was only used for warriors who had just started and were still below the Khanate stage to build a foundation. However, when Suyun used it, it had the original meaning of Vajra. The Vajra was the protector of the Buddhist sect. It was formless and heartless, indestructible and unbreakable. With that punch, Chu Xiu's 3 extinguishing city arrow was directly shattered. However, in the next moment, the endless extinguishing fire had already shrouded Su Yun. Even if you had the power of Vajra, you would still be unable to escape the burning of the extinguishing fire. Su Yun formed a lotus seal in his hand and stepped forward. With every step he took, a lotus bloomed. His body was surrounded by the extinguishing demon flames, and the light that the lotus bloomed actually completely offset the flames. After taking 7 steps, Suyun had already arrived before Chu Xiu, and then his hand descended in a seemingly palm yet not a palm. A 9-profundity Bodhi tree had already condensed in his hand, and it emanated 9 types of radiance. Every single one of them represented that he'd cultivated a Buddhist insight to the limit. The 9-wonder dragon tree, Su Yun, did not actually refer to his martial arts. Instead, it referred to his 9 kinds of understanding of Buddhist doctrine. Of course, there were more than 9 kinds, but 9 was the extreme number. Once the 9-wonder dragon tree appeared, the supreme Buddhist kingdom descended. At this moment, Su Yun's power was even close to an existence like Su Ci, who was in the mysterious heaven and earth realm. When they saw the power of Su Yun's attack, the expressions of Su Jing and the other warriors from the Great Light Temple changed. What realm had Chu Xiu reached now that he could actually force Su Yun to use his full strength? It had to be known that when Butiannan came to the Great Light Temple to cause trouble, Su Yun had only dealt with him with a few moves. For so many years, besides facing Donghuang Tai, Su Yun had almost never used his full strength. Was Chu Xiu's strength really this terrifying? In the next moment, Chu Xiu had already used his actions to tell them the result. Shrouded in the Buddhist kingdom, under the suppression of the 9 Wonder Bodhi trees' Buddhist light, Chu Xiu formed seals with his hands. Boundless demonic energy surged, and in an instant, the heaven-weeping blood rain descended. Ghosts and gods howled, and all things darkened. The power of the Great Compassion mantra directly tore apart the boundless Buddhist kingdom. Chapter 970. Among the true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses in the world, Su Yun was definitely among the top. Of course, Kong Dongming had clearly reached the heaven and earth mysterious realm but did not break through, so he could not be judged by common sense. But now, Chu Xiu was fighting Su Yun back and forth. At least, he was not at a disadvantage. This already shocked many people. Chu Xiu was like this, but Shang Tianliang was not optimistic. Although Shang Tianliang's strength had recovered to the level of a normal heaven and earth mysterious realm powerhouse, compared to Su Ci, there was still a gap. In the end, Shang Tianliang used his All Things Forest. Its power was indeed amazing, but it was still broken by Su Ci. Both sides fought fiercely for a long time, but in the end, there was no result. Both sides retreated. If they continued to fight, it would not be a fierce battle, but a fight to the death. The news of primitive Devil Cave had spread. At present, only the forces in the north had come. The others had not yet arrived. Chu Xiu did not want to fight to the death with the Great Light Temple at this time, so he could only stop. But similarly, although Chu Xiu had stopped, he could also stop the Great Light Temple from continuing to seal primitive Devil Cave. As long as they sealed it, Chu Xiu would start to harass them. In short, they would not let them have peace. At the same time, given the Great Light Temple's power, it would not be easy for them to completely finish off Chu Xiu's side. Thus, the two sides remained in a stalemate until the forces of Eastern Qi and Western Chu all arrived. Because of the news from Chu Xiu, the first to arrive were people from Wei Shuya's side. They had just left the northern Yan, but they had to return. Wei Shuya smiled bitterly. If I had known this would happen, I would not have gone back. In the end, I have been rushing all this time. In addition to Wei Shuya, people like Phaseless Demon Sects Ren Qianxiu, Scarlet Demon Sects Qin Chaoxian, and Situ Qi also arrived. After all, this was the birth of the primitive demon cave. It was a grand event that concerned the entire demonic path. Any martial artist of the demonic path would be extremely sensitive to this. After all, this was related to their own interests. Righteous path martial artists might not be active, but wouldn't the demonic path martial artists be? Moreover, among the people who came this time, Chu Xiu actually discovered a few powerhouses in the true fire spirit refinement realm. Their bodies also emitted an astonishing demonic aura. Clearly, they were also martial artists of the demonic Dao. Chu Xiu transmitted his voice to Wei Shuya, Elder Wei, who are these people? When did the Yinma lineage have so many devil Dao martial artists? Previously, Chu Xiu had thought that the strength of the Yinma clan was very weak, but now it seemed that other than the fact that they did not have the existence of the heaven and earth mysterious realm, they did not lose to the righteous path in terms of the number of true fire spirit refinement realm. However, Wei Shuya shook his head and said, they are not members of the Yinma clan. They are rogue cultivators who have been cultivating in seclusion for a long time. Their attitude is unclear, so don't bother with them for the time being. Chu Xiu nodded his head in understanding. So that was how it was. The demonic Tao did not only consist of bright demons and hidden demons. After so many years, there were always people who were self-taught, so they did not belong to the bright demons or the hidden demons. However, after such people cultivated to a certain level, they would either establish a sect and join the bright demons or choose to join the hidden demons. For example, Chu Wuji was like this. However, there were still some people who were used to being free, or for some other reason, they did not want to join either the bright demons or the hidden demons. Therefore, they had always been in the Jianghu as rogue cultivators. Although such people were few, there were still some. Now that all the people of the demonic Tao had gathered here, the power could be said to be quite astonishing. Although the camps were clearly divided into several kinds, Chu Xiu and Wei Shuya were on one side, Situ Chi and the others who had enmity with Chu Xiu were on another side, the other rogue cultivators were on another side, and Sheng Beishuan's evil extreme sect was on another side. But no matter what, they were all people of the demonic Tao. If they did not take advantage of their strength to join forces to repel the Great Light Temple, then what were they waiting for? Chu Xiu stood up and said in a low voice, "Everyone, the Great Light Temple wants to seal the primitive devil cave and not let us demonic Tao have a chance to shine. This is very malicious. Ever since the annihilation of the Kunlun demon sect, our devil Tao has been suppressed. Now that we finally have a chance to stand out and have a fortuitous encounter, there are people who can't bear to see us doing well. How can we tolerate this? Right now, we should put aside our prejudices and join forces against the enemy. Only then can we repel the Great Light Temple and enter the primitive devil cave." Just like that, the Great Light Temple watched as Chu Xiu contacted the various forces here and prepared to attack. But there was nothing they could do. The primitive devil cave had too much significance to the demonic Tao. No demonic Tao martial artist could resist this temptation. Therefore, the Great Light Temple could only try their best to guard the entrance to the primitive devil cave and hope that the other righteous sects could rush over as soon as possible. But at this moment, just as Chu Xiu finished speaking, a voice that was neither gentle nor gentle sneered, "Chu Xiu, what you said is right, but there are sect masters and senior Ju Shao of the demonic Tao here. It's fine for old Wei to say this, but for you to say it, aren't you a little too arrogant?" The person who said this was Situ Chi. This person was narrow-minded. After being rebuked by Chu Xiu several times, he was already filled with anger. At this time, there were so many demonic Tao martial artists here. Which one of them was not older than Chu Xiu? Seeing that Chu Xiu wanted to stand out and take the lead, he also subconsciously mocked him. Everyone present had different expressions. This was especially so for those demonic Tao cultivators who were loose cultivators. They had long heard that there seemed to be some internal conflict within the hidden devil lineage. Now it seemed that this was true, and they were openly challenging each other. A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. In the next moment, his figure directly arrived in front of Situ Chi. His fist fell, and endless demonic energy gathered into a storm that swept down. The power was astonishing. Everyone's expressions changed. No one thought that Chu Xiu would turn hostile and attack as he said he would. Situ Chi was horrified. His hands formed a seal, and in an instant, the sound of ghosts crying and gods howling rang out. An evil and strange fog blocked in front of him, as if there were countless evil ghosts wailing in it. The Scarlet Drill demonic sect's Qin Chao Xian also attacked. With a palm strike, a blood-red waterfall swept across the sky. The powerful palm force was like a vast sea and great river that blocked the attack. Kuan Mo, who was standing beside Situ Chi, also attacked. Black-red demonic fire bloomed, and there was a faint shadow of a demon with two horns on its head. However, in the face of Chu Xiu's unparalleled punch, the combined power of the three was shattered in an instant. The ghost fog was extinguished, the blood-red waterfall was torn apart, and the black-red demonic fire was also extinguished. The three of them retreated several steps, especially Situ-Chi, who bore the brunt of the attack. He resisted the pain of his internal organs being shaken and did not vomit blood. At this moment, he was both shocked and furious. He was shocked that Chu Xiu's strength had reached such a level, and he was furious that he, Chu Xiu, actually dared to attack him in front of everyone, including the Great Light Temple. He even dared to disregard the reputation of the demonic path. Situ-Chi still did not understand Chu Xiu. In Chu Xiu's eyes, the reputation of the demonic path did not matter. He only cared about his own reputation. Situ-Chi dared to clamor at him, which was equivalent to taking away his reputation. Not to mention attacking him in front of the Great Light Temple. Even if Situ-Chi wanted to kill him, what was there to be afraid of? Qin Chaoxian had no intention of becoming enemies with Chu Xiu. He just did not want to see the hidden devil lineage fight amongst themselves at this moment. Therefore, he also hurriedly persuaded, Official Chu, calm down. The people from the Great Light Temple are still here. Don't let them see you as a joke. The others, like Umoya and the others, also tried to persuade him. Fighting amongst themselves at this moment would indeed only let others see them as a joke. Chu Xiu sneered and said, see them as a joke. Why didn't he, Situ-Chi, think about whether others would see him as a joke when he said such nonsense? If people respect me, I will respect them tenfold. At a time like this, you still want to talk about seniority with me? You're just an impoverished family, yet you're acting like a senior in front of me. If you want to enter the primitive devil cave, then make your move. If not, then scram. If you want to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor, then don't blame me for being impolite. Everyone, does anyone still have a different opinion? When dealing with this group of demonic path people, one could not be too polite. Each and every one of them were people who did not learn their lesson. They were people who could be forced but not persuaded. If they did not listen to reason, then they would just use their fists. For example, when Chu Xiu said these words, although some of the people present were indeed displeased that a junior like Chu Xiu was being so arrogant here, no one dared to clamor at Chu Xiu. They had all seen the power of Chu Xiu's punch just now. It was shocking. The three of them joined forces and yet they could not block Chu Xiu's punch. It was simply terrifying. Moreover, the temptation of the primitive devil cave was enough to make people forget many things. Even if Chu Xiu had such an attitude, no one present left. Wei Shuya watched this scene from the side and did not say a word. If it was in the past, Wei Shuya would definitely tell Chu Xiu to leave a way out. They were all from the Immortal lineage, so he should not be so ruthless. But now, he did not want to care so much. Situ-Chi and the others had really hurt him. He had planned for the Immortal lineage his entire life, but in the end, he still had his own selfish motives. He did not even hesitate to implicate the entire Immortal lineage for his own benefit. What was the use of keeping such people alive? If they fell out with each other, then so be it. Anyway, with Chu Xiu's current strength, he did not care about these people. Just as Chu Xiu was preparing to lead the people from the Immortal lineage to attack the Great Light Temple, an accident happened. The people from the other righteous sects had finally arrived. On the side of the Chunyang Dao sect, Ling Yunzi, who was in seclusion to stabilize his realm, brought a few old Taoist priests from the Chunyang Dao sect with him. Although there were not many of them, the power of the heaven and earth mysterious realm was there. The sect leader of the true martial arts sect, Lu Chonglu, also came personally with people. There was also the Shangshui Ying clan, but the Ying clan's ancestor did not come. Only Ying Sanshu came. The Shangshui Ying clan was not from the Yinma lineage. They were interested in the things in the primitive devil cave, but not too much. The Shangshui Ying clan was not considered to be from the righteous sects, so they were not interested in suppressing the Yinma lineage like the Great Light Temple. Ying Sanshu was enough. Seeing these people coming, the expressions of the Inma martial artists present darkened. Not to mention others, how could they resist the two heaven and earth mysterious realm powerhouses, Su Ci and Ling Yunzi? Chapter 971. The arrival of the righteous sects was a heavy blow to the Devil Dao. The Taoist and Buddhist sects, the 9 great families, and the 5 great sword sects, how many existences at the heaven and earth elemental realm were there? How many trump cards were comparable to the heaven and earth elemental realm? And what about the Devil Dao? Apart from the moon-worshipping cult, the others were really vulnerable in front of the heaven and earth elemental realm powerhouses. Especially Wei Shuya, a member of the hidden devil clan, had a complicated expression. Although the moon-worshipping cult did not betray the Kunlun devil cult, the relationship between the two sides was not harmonious. But now, the only one who could support the entire Devil Dao was the moon-worshipping cult, and only the moon-worshipping cult. This made Wei Shuya feel very embarrassed. At this time, Wei Shuya turned to look at Chu Xiu. He felt a lot more comforted. At least the hidden devil clan still had Chu Xiu. Although Shang Tianliang was not a member of the hidden devil clan, he was Chu Xiu's man, so he was one of them. It was better than nothing. At this moment, the atmosphere had gradually become subtle when they saw Ling Yunzi make an appearance. The righteous sects had already arrived. Even if Chu Xiu gathered all the Devil Dao martial artists to attack together, how could they resist 2 heaven and earth elemental realm existences? At this time, people from other forces came one after another. There were martial artists from the big sects, and there were also itinerant cultivators. Almost all the forces that knew about the primitive Devil Cave's appearance would send people here. Even if they did not enter, they would still have something to watch. For example, the current battle between the righteous and demonic sections. Chu Xiu also saw that Fang Qishao had also come. He had been brought here by Dugu Li and Meng Yanhe of the Sword King City. When he saw Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, he waved at them and greeted them. But he was immediately pulled aside by Dugu Li, who scolded him for not recognizing the situation. Can't you see what the situation is between the righteous and demonic sects? They are about to fight, so why are you still going there? Sword King City's sect leader Shen Tianwang did not come. Chu Xiu guessed that he was either injured or too ashamed to come. Chu Xiu had already experienced Kong Dongming's strength. He was indeed terrifyingly strong. Although Heavenly King Shen was not weak, there was still a huge gap between him and Kong Dongming. It was normal for him to be injured. At this time, the first to arrive were the forces from Eastern Qi. When the forces from West Chu also arrived, everyone finally understood what it meant to have a gathering of experts. Over at the Celestial Master Manor, the old Celestial Master did not come. Only Xian Longzi and an old Taoist priest came. The old Daoist priest was really old. His hair and beard were all white, and he was almost bald. He looked like a monk, and the wrinkles on his face could squash a fly. His eyes were open, but they didn't seem to be open. He held a cane, and his back was bent. He looked like he was about to die. However, no one dared to look down on this old Taoist. Even Ling Yunzi, who had already stepped into the mysterious realm of heaven and earth, and Lu Changhe of the real martial arts sect, were polite to him and called him Senior Qing. This old Taoist priest's background was not simple. He was a Taoist child of the old Celestial Master. He was in charge of serving tea, washing clothes, and folding blankets. He did not even have a Taoist name. The old Celestial Master used to call him Little Qing, then Ah Qing. Of course, now everyone had to call him Senior Qing. Most importantly, Senior Qing had been serving the Celestial Master since he was a middle-aged man, and had been by his side until now. What did this mean? It meant that he was not much younger than the old Celestial Master. The old Celestial Master had lived for more than 500 years. This senior Qing might have lived for close to 500 years. No one knew how strong this senior Qing was. They did not even know if he was at the true fire spirit refinement state or the mystic heaven and earth state. If one said that he was at the mystic heaven and earth state, then his aura was wrong. However, if one said that he was at the true fire spirit refinement state, then how many people at the true fire spirit refinement state could live for such a long time? Anyway, this senior Qing's status in the Dragon Tiger Mountain was very high. He was second only to the old celestial master. Even Xian Longzi, who had always been arrogant, was very obedient in front of him. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes. This old Taoist priest of the Dragon Tiger Mountain was definitely not simple. Chu Xiu seemed to remember that in the past, Yuan Tianfang had massacred Taoist warriors in the Central Plains warriors. As a result, he had been possessed and went to find trouble with the Dragon Tiger Mountain. He had been slapped away by this old Taoist priest, who seemed to be about to be buried. He had not dared to come to the Central Plains warriors for decades. Although Yuan Tianfang had died in the hands of Chu Xiu had never looked down on Yuan Tianfang. That person's strength was not weak. Although it was very easy for the current Chu Xiu to kill Yuan Tianfang, he could almost crush him and not give him any chance to fight back. However, if he was like this senior Qing, who had sent Yuan Tianfang flying with just a slap, it would be too difficult. At the very least, with the current strength of Chu Xiu, he could not do it. Thinking about it this way, it was a little scary. Looking at the three major Taoist sects, the most terrifying was actually the Celestial Master abode of the Dragon Tiger Mountain. The old Celestial Master had been in power for so long, and nothing had happened to the Celestial Master abode for 500 years. One could imagine how much heritage and trump cards the Celestial Master abode had accumulated. Since the Celestial Master abode had come, the other forces in West Chu had naturally come as well. Shen Baochen came from the Forgetful Sword Hut, and Yan Ji came from the Storm Sword Tomb. However, he was carrying a huge iron box on his back. It was unknown what was inside. At this time, the situation between the righteous and demonic paths had been reversed. The strength of the righteous path sects had completely crushed the demonic path lineage, and the atmosphere between the two sides was even more tense. Su Ci turned to Ling Yunzi and said, "Sect Master Ling Yunzi, the appearance of the primitive devil cave is not a good thing for the martial world. Now that the righteous path sects have gathered, let's work together to completely seal it. At the very least, we can ensure that it will not appear in a short period of time." But before Ling Yunzi could say anything, a cold voice was heard, "Bald donkey, hypocrite. What is good for the demonic path is not good for the martial world. In the entire martial world, there is only your righteous path lineage, and there is no demonic path lineage? The sect master is here, I want to see who dares to move." As the voice fell, Dong Huang Tai's black and gold robe fluttered in the wind as he descended from the sky. There was another person beside him, also at the true fire spirit refinement realm. His entire body was covered in a rainbow-colored robe, giving off a very strange feeling. Mei Qinglian said with a sound transmission from the side, "This person is the Five Poison Cult sect master, Poison Guanyin, He Sai Hua. The Five Poison Cult has always respected the moon-worshipping cult, so it's normal for her to come with them." The Five Poison Cult was considered very low-key in the martial world. Their methods of playing with poison were something that even the demonic path feared. Therefore, after so many years, the Five Poison Cult had developed a habit of being low-key. Most of the time, they only stayed in West Chu and dealt with those poisonous insects. But this was the first time that Chu Xiu had heard that the Five Poison Cult sect master was actually a woman. Moreover, she had such an unsophisticated name like He Sai Hua. Of course, no matter who it was, their focus wasn't on He Sai Hua, but on the person behind Dong Huang Tai and He Sai Hua. Yi Xiaonan was wearing a simple white linen robe and his feet were bare. There was a blood-stained crescent blade dancing around his body, as if he was a pet spirit. Yi Xiaonan, who was ranked 5th on the sovereign list and was actually ranked 3rd in the world, the number 1 demonic cultivator, Yi Xiaonan, had personally come. At this moment, everyone present was silent. Countless people from the righteous path were filled with fear. Yi Xiaonan was only one person, but with just him alone, who dared to say that they could definitely win? Su Ci, who had been defeated by him before, could not, and Ling Yunzi, who had just entered the mysterious heaven and earth realm, could not either. Looking at the people present, Yi Xiaonan only lightly spat out 2 words, "Get out of the way." It was just 2 light words, but it was like a sharp blade hanging over their heads, making them shudder. Su Ci sighed and retreated with the people from the Great Light Temple. Yi Xiaonan could not stop him. Previously, Su Ci and the others had joined forces to attack Yi Xiaonan during the moon-worshipping cult's righteous and demonic battle, but they were not his match. Now, there were only him and Ling Yunzi, 2 mysterious heaven and earth realm cultivators, and there was also Chu Xiu watching from the side. The righteous sect still had strength, but unfortunately, not everyone was willing to wade into these muddy waters. The old celestial master did not come, but Rama should come. However, the barbarian land of South was too far from the northern lands. Even if the people of Eastern Qi and West Chu had arrived, they would not come. The 6th demon sect of the demonic path was also far away in the South Sea. At this time, they had not come, and were probably also on the way. If these few people could not stop Yi Xiaonan, if they did not get out of the way, could they still fight to the death? As the Great Light Temple retreated, the other people from the righteous path had a helpless look on their faces and could only retreat. In front of the current number 1 demonic cultivator, they could not stop him with just their strength. After everyone had retreated, Donghuang Tai sneered proudly. With a wave of his hand, a scorching flame bloomed, completely burning away the half-strengthened seal of the Great Light Temple in front of the primitive demon cave. Then, he swaggered in with Yi Xiaonan. Seeing this scene, the other people from the demonic path also followed Yi Xiaonan into the primitive demon cave. They were all people from the demonic path. It was not easy for them to encounter such a big backer, so of course, they had to make good use of it. Although Chu Xiu's limelight had been stolen by Yi Xiaonan, he still followed them into the primitive demon cave. Yi Xiaonan had the ability to intimidate everyone, so what was there to be envious of? Moreover, Yi Xiaonan's appearance here was also a good thing. He could help Chu Xiu attract hatred. Among the demonic path martial artists that were present, who was the most eye-catching? It was him, Chu Xiu. Now that Yi Xiaonan had come, this person had become him. Chu Xiu would rather keep a low profile. He would first accumulate strength in this primitive demon cave and find some good things. As for scheming against the righteous path, Yi Xiaonan had the strength, so it was better for him to do it. At this time, when the outside world saw the group of demonic path martial artists unexpectedly enter the primitive demon cave, everyone felt very helpless. They originally wanted to stop them, but in the end, they couldn't. Without saying anything further, Ling Yunzi directly led his people into the primitive demon cave. If they couldn't stop them outside, then they would stop them inside. In short, they couldn't let the people of the demonic path wantonly explore this place. Regardless of whether they could use the things inside, they couldn't let the people of the demonic path casually use them. Chapter 972. After entering primitive devil cave, Chu Xiu and the others weren't randomly sent out. They were still gathered together. The reason was simple: there was no formation in primitive devil cave. However, it was obviously not a good idea for everyone to gather together, so after everyone looked at each other, they subconsciously scattered, but not too far away. Only Yi Xiaonan led Donghuang Tai in a direction no one dared to follow. After entering primitive devil cave, Chu Xiu wasn't in a hurry to walk around. Instead, he looked around. This primitive devil cave gave Chu Xiu a gloomy, extremely gloomy feeling. There was no sun here, and the ground was dry red soil. There wasn't even a trace of green vegetation. And the strangest thing was that above Chu Xiu and the others wasn't the sky, but a dark river hanging above their heads. This scene was simply strange. Through the dark river, there was a faint blue light sprinkling down. One could even see some ferocious-looking giant fish swimming in the dark river. In any case, there was no such thing in the outside world. Chu Xiu asked, "Does anyone have any information about the interior of Primitive Devil Cave?" Lu Jianghu and Wei Shuya shook their heads. Chu Xiu frowned. "It's fine if Dugu Weiwei didn't say anything, but after so many years, has there not been a second person who came out of Primitive Devil Cave?" Wei Shuya said, "Of course there are, and there are many, but it's useless. Do you know why Primitive Devil Cave is called Primitive Devil Cave? Because no one lived here from the beginning. Everything seems to have been born naturally, without any reference." Chu Xiu was puzzled. Even so, there should be some natural reference, right? None. Primitive Devil Cave is constantly changing. Every time it appears, the interior will change, and it'll be completely different from the last time. If you take a map to explore here, not only will you waste time, but you'll also die miserably. Chu Xiu scratched his head. If this was the case, then this place was really tricky. Everything was unknown. Although the terrain had changed, Wei Shuya and the others still had some information about the general situation. Everything in the Primitive Devil Cave was naturally formed. Only the heavens knew why there was such a powerful demonic qi here. Therefore, as long as it was something born in the Primitive Devil Cave, no matter what it was, they had to be extremely careful. Even if it was a weed, it was the same. The few of them didn't have any clues at the moment, so they headed in one direction. There were some Devil Path rogue cultivators following them, but Chu Xiu did not care. There was still a large group of Righteous Path sect martial artists around. They were not here for the treasures, but to keep an eye on Chu Xiu and the others, to prevent them from obtaining any evil objects. Right at this moment, a small river suddenly appeared in front of Chu Xiu and the others. To be more precise, it was a small stream that was only 3 zhang wide. But upon closer inspection, what was flowing in the stream was actually dark red blood. Although the stream wasn't large, it was constantly flowing. Only the heavens knew how much blood was flowing in it. However, Lu Jianghu slightly frowned and said, "This stream isn't blood, but it isn't anything good either. It contains an extremely evil strength and is quite corrosive." Next to the stream, there was actually a large tree. This tree wasn't too strange, but its leaves were blood red and there were many head-sized fruits that were also blood red in color. Of course, in this place, it wasn't strange for a large tree to turn blood red, especially when it grew next to a blood red stream. Moreover, that blood red fruit actually emitted a delicate fragrance that made one feel as if they were floating in the clouds. Chu Xiu felt that something was wrong, but at this time, several Devil Path martial artists were already poking their heads out and walking towards the tree. These people were Devil Path rogue cultivators. When they heard the news of Primitive Demon Cave, they immediately rushed over. Some of them didn't even know what Primitive Demon Cave was, they only knew that there was a supreme treasure of the Devil Path inside. Currently, Chu Xiu and the other Devil Path giants hadn't moved, and the Righteous Path sects hadn't moved either. But, these rogue cultivators couldn't wait any longer. They wanted to take a look at the fruit and see what kind of treasure it was. A group of people from the Great Light Temple were also not too far away. Su Ci followed Yi Shaonan, Su Yun, Su Yan, and the others followed Chu Xiu. Seeing these Devil Path rogue cultivators preparing to move, a disciple wanted to intercept them, but he was stopped by Su Yun. Su Yun gestured for him to wait a moment, indicating that he should take a look. As the several demonic path martial artists arrived at the base of the tree and didn't find anything strange, they prepared to pick the fruits. But then, the blood-red fruits suddenly spun in a circle. Behind the blood-red fruits, there were actually fierce human faces. Those Devil Path rogue cultivators were startled. But in the next moment, those human faces opened their ferocious mouths and spat out long tongues, wrapping around the bodies of those Devil Path rogue cultivators. At the same time, the blood-red leaves cut through their meridians. In an instant it was as if they were being dismembered. Countless amounts of blood splattered out. Roots and vines broke out from the ground, completely dragging them underground. There was a loud noise. The 4 Devil Path rogue cultivators had already died. On that evil tree, 4 fruits with human faces immediately grew out. Although their faces were hideous, everyone could vaguely see that they were the faces of those 4 Devil Path rogue cultivators. At this time, everyone immediately understood. The reason why there were so many fruits on this evil tree was because they belonged to the martial artists who had come here in the past. These things were meant to eat people. At this time, an old Daoist priest from the Chunyang Dao sect snorted coldly. "Evil things, staying here will only harm people." As soon as he finished speaking, the old Daoist priest slapped his palm. A powerful and scorching pure yang energy fell and went straight for that evil tree. Many Devil Path martial artists present looked at the old Daoist priest with unfriendly gazes. Who was the evil path talking about? In front of so many Devil Path martial artists, he still dared to talk about the evil path. Was he trying to provoke them? However, Ling Yunzi, a heaven and earth mysterious realm powerhouse, was also present. Therefore, no one said anything. The scorching pure yang energy instantly ignited the evil tree. There were bursts of wailing coming from it. It was very strange. After a long while, the tree that was tens of feet tall was only left with its roots. However, no matter how hard the pure yang astral chi burned it, it didn't break. Even the old Daoist priest's astral sword couldn't do anything to it. Everyone didn't care much about it. However, at this time, Lu Jianghu made a sound of surprise and walked towards the place where the tree roots were. Lu Jianghu lifted up the soil and suddenly said, "Cult Master has been here before." Chu Xiu walked over and said, "Are you sure? How can you tell?" Lu Jianghu pointed to the slightly black soil below and said, "This is the mark left behind by sect leader's heavenless demon palm. This martial skill was used by sect leader long ago. Later, he didn't use it anymore. In the entire Saint sect, only sect leader and heartless demon venerable know it. The latter was also taught by sect leader. As far as I know, heartless demon venerable didn't enter this primitive devil cave. Therefore, this palm can only be left behind by sect leader." As he said that, Lu Jianghu took a step forward. Suddenly, the surrounding gravel flew and layers of soil were lifted. What appeared in front of everyone was a huge palm print. Moreover, the root of the evil tree was in the middle of the palm print. Obviously, in the past, Dugu Weiwei had also passed by this place and was a little unhappy when he saw this thing. Therefore, he gave it a palm. However, no one knew what this evil tree was. It was able to survive after taking a palm from Dugu Weiwei. It relied on a tree root to grow into this appearance. Seeing the marks left behind by Dugu Weiwei, Chu Xiu's eyes suddenly lit up. If he followed the traces left behind by Dugu Weiwei, he might be able to find some good stuff. Although the terrain of this place was constantly changing, the traces left behind by an expert like Dugu Weiwei would still be imprinted on the ground. These things couldn't be erased. Continue to dig and find the marks left behind by Dugu Weiwei. When Lu Jianghu heard this, he was very dissatisfied. He was the dignified hall master of the Blood Demon Hall and was also a big figure of the Kunlun devil cult in the past. "How dare you, Chu Xiu, ask me to be a gravedigger?" However, under Chu Xiu's intense gaze, Lu Jianghu had no choice but to continue digging. It had to be said that the demonic blood technique, which covered a large area of effect, was extraordinarily effective when it came to digging. Traces of blood lines wrapped around Lu Jianghe and extended into the soil, raising large amounts of dirt and dust. The terrain had changed for hundreds of years, but for experts like Dugu Weiwei in the past, even if they didn't move at all, the heaven-earth yuan qi would involuntarily linger around them. Just like Shang Tianliang now. Wherever he walked, the power had even seeped several feet into the ground. This wasn't intentional, but his mental power subconsciously probed down to see if there was any danger underground. Although nothing could be seen now, after hundreds of years of dust accumulation, it would be very obvious. Sure enough, as large pieces of soil were dug up, footprints appeared. Chu Xiu and the others immediately followed the direction of the footprints. Some of the warriors present saw the actions of Chu Xiu and the others. Some did not understand what Chu Xiu and the others were doing, so they immediately turned around and left, searching in another direction. Now that they followed Chu Xiu, even if they saw something good, they couldn't compete with Chu Xiu and the others. Although the road ahead was dangerous, at least there was still a chance. Of course, forces like the Great Light Temple and the Chunyang Dao sect were still hanging behind Chu Xiu and the others. Their goal was never to snatch the treasure, but to stop Chu Xiu and the others from getting the treasure. It was fine if it was an ordinary item, but if it was a great ominous item that could affect the changes in the power of the righteous and demonic sects, they absolutely could not let the people of the demonic sects get it. Just like Dugu Weiwei's Listen to the Spring Rain, there was already a demonic blade stained with blood in the pugilistic world. Now that it had disappeared with Dugu Weiwei, the people of the righteous sects did not want another one to appear. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.